Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Rapid Drivers Club Community Super League Season 2, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available on PC and next generation consoles known as Assetto Corsa Competizione. Of course, we're hosted on the PC version of the sim racing platform, and it is the case that the series now moves into the second half of its season tonight with round number 4 of 6, and well, the odds could not be more stacked given the fact that we have had a championship that has gone right down to the wire so far. Not necessarily in terms of the championship lead, that's been quite firm, but definitely in the hunt to be the number one contender to take the fight to the championship leaders, but more on that in a brief second. First, we should take you through our schedule for tonight, times in British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1. It will be the case that in just over 9 minutes time, we'll be bringing you the qualifying session, 15 minutes of qualifying, which will see all of our drivers out of the circuit trying to deliver the best possible lap time they can to set themselves up well for our one and only race on the schedule for tonight, and that is at 7:30, the 90-minute race with the grid build-up and whatnot. It is the case we'll have 90 minutes of racing action at a circuit where we're going to be seeing plenty of overtaking, and strategy is definitely going to play a major factor as well. After that, we'll be taking a brief pause before catching up with our podium finishers for the post-race interviews at approximately 9:10 tonight. This broadcast is being brought to you live on 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to youtube.com and search for TX141TX or Paul Walsh, and you can tune in there. Alternatively, if you are more of a Twitch user, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in on Twitch. And who is TX141? Who is Paul Walsh? Well, that is I, your host and commentator. I'll be bringing you all the racing action tonight and indeed for the remainder of the season. And what a season it has been so far. My name, of course, formerly Paul Walsh, or TX141 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and it is the case that it's my pleasure to be able to bring you all this to life over the course of the 6-round calendar. Now, speaking of that calendar, it is the case that last time out, of course, back on the 6th of August, 2 weeks ago, we were down in Australia for Bathurst on Mount Panorama, as it's known in full, and well, the Bathurst circuit definitely delivered in terms of intense racing from start to finish, and we saw it was the case that Harry Phillips made it 2 back-to-back wins on the trot after his inaugural win at Donington Park in round number 2. He picked up the win again at Bathurst. And you can imagine now the emphasis will be on whether Harry Phillips can make it 3 wins in a row, or whether it's the case that one of his rivals could take that win away. Indeed, we've only had 2 winners so far in this series. It's Harry Phillips who's taken 2 wins, and Geert Fischer who has taken a single win. Of course, Harry Phillips for Wild Things Racing, and Geert Fischer for what is Salt Racing Community, or Salt Community Racing as they're known properly, and Fischer taking that win all the way back in round number 1 at Kyle Army. But our calendar so far has seen our drivers travel from South Africa in round number 1 to the United Kingdom in round number 2 to Australia in round number 3, and all 3 rounds have been different in nature, where our first 2 rounds were more emphatic with regards to that strategy and on-track overtaking, but Bathurst saw all that plus also the conundrum of some very tricky racing conditions in terms of the weather. And now today, for round number 4, as we march on to the second half of the season, we are in France for Circuit Paul Ricard. And well, what a circuit we're at today. This is a circuit which some of our drivers will be loathing, some of our drivers will be loving tonight, and we'll tell you why exactly in short order. But after today, we'll only have 2 more rounds to go, with round number 5 seeing us return to the United Kingdom for the Alton Park circuit on the 3rd of September, and then we'll bring it all to a close at Watkins Glen, the revival place of road racing in the United States of America in the state of New York on the 17th of September. And well, those 2 rounds are going to be absolute firecrackers, but indeed, before we get to them, we must focus on round number 4, because this round is sure to be one that is going to throw a lot up in the way in terms of potential mix-ups in the standings. But speaking of those standings, it is the case that our top 5 firstly in terms of our teams, it is Salt Community Racing who continue to lead after 3 rounds, and of course we have a single drop scoring effect with their lead now standing at 679 points, 106 points clear of second place team SOP Motorsport. What's been the secret behind the success of Salt Community Racing? It has been consistency through and through. They have always had multiple drivers inside the top 5, if not definitely inside the top 10, and it is the case with 1 win to their name in round number 1, of course, with Geert Fischer, and well, multiple podiums, particularly from Samir Foch, or as he is also known as Sir Foch. It is the case. You can imagine that Salt Community Racing would love to have one of their other drivers potentially take that top step today, and we do have other names such as Iket Headwinder as well, and also Timu Karapinen, who may be able to take that win and indeed deprive Harry Phillips of making it 3 in a row. But before we come on to Wild Things Racing, we must go down the order naturally, and SOP Motorsport in P2 there on 573 points. It is the case that SOP Motorsport really have been the team that has played the strategic stakes very well over the course of the opening 3 rounds. Another team has been able to use strategy to get their drives to really push upwards into that top 10 time and time again. And you can imagine after their success at Bathurst, seeing them pick up 264 points, it will be the case today they want to go a little bit further and get closer to that 309 points tally they picked up back at Kyle Army in round number 1. Stand on 573 points. They are only a small margin ahead of DC Sim Racing, but a small margin is a margin all the same. And DC Sim Racing, the primarily Dutch outfit with a couple of Belgian drivers thrown into the mix on 537 points. Much like SOP Motorsport, they have been using the strategy and also outright pace their advantage. The only downside to DC Sim Racing has been some inconsistency. They've normally had 1 or 2 drivers right up there fighting for the top 5 finishes, but then they've had quite a middling performance elsewhere, and they'll be looking to try and arrest that and guarantee at least 3 of their 4 drivers finish inside that top 10 tonight. But then we come on to P4 team Wild Things Racing here on 499 points. And last time out, of course, at the Bathurst circuit, it was the case that Wild Things Racing saw a lot of positives, but also a lot of negatives. The positive, of course, being with Harry Phillips taking the win, and what was Rob Taplin, and I kept calling him Taplin. His name is Taplin, I should clarify. It is the case, both of them absolutely flying at the Australian circuit. Meanwhile, their peers not having a stronger day by comparison, and therefore the point scores not really building up towards a big 300, which is what they need. And they're on 499 points, 11 clear of Rapid Drivers Club there, and Rapid Drivers Club doing very well at Mount Panorama, matching their performances in round number 2 at what was Donington Park, and they'll be looking to try and get some more points on the board tonight in order to jump up into that top 3. And what's very telling here is the fact that we have less than a 90-point gap between 2nd place and 5th place. So this battle to be the best contender to chase after Salt Community Racing is definitely intensifying as time has gone on. But outside of the top 5 here, looking at the rest of our teams, Quantum Racing leading the best of the rest here in P6 on 385 points. 85 points clear of RIP Racing Club that did not score any points in the last round. An unfortunate day for RIP Racing Club, but you can expect they'll be taking the fight to Quantum Racing. And Quantum Racing is starting to establish a sense of consistency at Bathurst. Indeed, following on from their success at Donington Park, they are going to be a team to watch tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them potentially try and get themselves into P5 come the finish. The Sim Racing Collective in P8, they're on 217 points, joint 217 points with Formula Racing League, albeit a head-on result countback, and these 2 teams in P8 and P9, both looking to get a big score on the board to jump them right up there and clear their competitors. But indeed, both teams having had struggles at each and every round and also successes, but the struggles have outweighed those successes to an extent, and they'll be looking to try and find that form tonight. And then to complete the top 10 half-fast game now, or HFG as they're known, on 182 points with 2 91-point finish scores contributed to that 182 points. And they, much like Formula Racing League and the Sim Racing Collective, will be looking for a big haul tonight to try and turn things around. Box Motorsports there, last of our contenders in P11, having yet to turn a lap at any of our particular rounds. But as for our track for tonight, it is Circuit Paul Ricard in the Le Castellet region, I should say in Le Castellet, France. Within the Var region of France, it is the case that this circuit is a very different circuit from what we've seen so far, because this is a circuit which is a balance of performance circuit. Now, what do we mean by that? This is why the official balance of performance testing and pre-season balance of performance setting circuits, or the Fanatec GT World Challenge Series, and it is the case, therefore, this circuit has no particular theme to it. It has a little bit of everything, and you can see that from the circuit map here, provided to us by the user Human Body Politer 5 from wikipedia.org. It is the case consisting of 13 corners. This circuit has medium speed apexes towards the end of the lap, which are preceded by an almost 2 kilometre long straight, where we'll be seeing that emphasis on straight line speed. And then before all that, turns 1 through to 7, it is the case that we do have that focus on what is car rotation, heavy braking, and the ability to get back on the power as aggressively as possible. Put it all together, it means there is no one ideal way to set up your car for this circuit. It is the case that you come to this circuit with a setup that you as the driver are comfortable with, and you have to deliver it with it. And you can imagine some drivers will go for maximum downforce in the car for the latter half of the lap and also for the early stage of the lap, but they'll lose out massively on that back straight. Some drivers, meanwhile, will go for a compromise in the middle, so be an all-rounder, but not great at anything in particular. And then some will go for straight line speed, and they'll be looking to gain it all on what is that back straight and also the start-finish straight, but they'll lose out through the corners, particularly the tricky medium and high-speed apexes of turns 8 through to turn number 12, which follow up to the rest of the lap, and indeed that heavy braking zone at 13, which can catch any driver out with that hairpin. And that's why this circuit is going to be such an interesting one, because it really places the emphasis here on how the drivers prefer their car to work. And of course, as we come to the rules here, we can see that all of our drivers are driving the same car, the BMW M4 GT3, which is what makes this even better in the fact that it really now now starts to put an emphasis on understanding the car and understanding your driving style and mapping it to the car. And of course, to remind you, this is a single driver series where each driver's points scored will be contributed to their respective community. So there's no drivers' championship per se. It is the case it is a team's championship only. In qualifying, drivers are permitted to use return to garage whilst out of the circuit, so long as they do so in a safe manner. And within the race itself, there's one mandatory pit stop which will require fuel to be added. Changing tyres is optional. We haven't really seen any tyre changes so far. And all of this pit stop has to be taking place within a 30-minute pit window. And that is, of course, either side of what is the midpoint of the race. A 90-minute race, so at 45 minutes, that's the midpoint. So you can imagine 30 minutes into the race and 60 minutes into the race, that is where the pit window lies. But that's enough rules and regulations and everything else in between. I know what you're all here for. You're here for the racing. And, well, we head trackside here. And it is the case that as we do head trackside and we do find that trackside audio for you, it is the case that we have Harry Phillips here, where he is in the pit lane right now and really has been the big name in terms of solo performances. 2 wins on the bounce, and he'll be looking to try and make it 3 in a row today as he gets ready to go. But in terms of our drives out of the circuit right now, indeed, SOP Motorsport here, Mark Bunyan being one of their representatives, it will be the case the number 4 driver, much like his teammates, will once again be looking to try and deliver a masterclass of strategy. And I think SOP Motorsport outside of Salt Community Racing really have emphasised that concept of delivering as a team time and time again as Bunyan jumps to the pit lane. Indeed, we are just waiting right now to go into that qualifying session in the fact that all of our drivers are coming to the end of their last practice laps here. And of course, it is the evening at Circuit Paul Ricard. It is currently 8:15 in the evening, and we do have that sun low on the horizon. We haven't got any rain in the forecast. It is likely to be a dry race from start to finish. Indeed, a dry race evening from start to finish in qualifying and also the race itself, as we do see Alex Nunes here making his way up towards the final corner. And indeed, the Portuguese driver, one of the masterminds behind the series of Rapid Drivers Club, alongside his colleagues. It is the case they put it all together, and thank you to Alex Nunes and his colleagues as well for doing such a wonderful job in running the series. But now, speaking of running things, it's time for our drivers to run into qualifying with full fever, and who will come out on top come the end of qualifying? Let's find out. Well, as we see Tim Troket here, our leading driver, making his way out of the pit lane. And the DC Sim Racing driver here from the Netherlands in a 997 car has been one of those drivers who really has been a major factor all the way through the season so far. And indeed, DC Sim Racing as a whole, all of their drivers have been very, very strong. The only thing has really been that they've been involved in some instances, not necessarily of their own doing, and it is the case. That's where they've lost some key points. But you would argue that DC Sim Racing, if things have gone their way, it would be the case they would be in P2 right now. But again, the idea being here, that's why SOP Motorsport are doing so well in that P2 position, in the fact they've just been able to wring those points out of each and every round. But of course, we can't take away from the fact that the Salt Community Racing team, and we do have one of the representatives on screen of Hubert Szymanski here, the Polish driver, making his way down that extensive 2-kilometre back straight, 1.8 kilometres if you wanted to be a little bit more precise, rather than rounding up to a full kilometre. It is the case, number 898 driver here, much like his teammates, be looking to deliver. And we can also see Christoph Samin there, but just a little bit further ahead, the DC Sim Racing driver. He'll be looking to try and work with Tim Troket. You can see drivers lining up in groups as part of their team. Indeed, DC Sim Racing all lining up as a trio here and trying to go onto a lap as a group. And I wonder if that's to try and exploit the toe down the back straight here, and they're feeling confident about what they can deliver. But at the front of this group, we do have Ryan Cooper here making his debut for World Victor Racing in this series. Here's the Dutchman. And as he makes his way through what is turn at number 10 there and heading through at the Ryan Kink of 11 and up towards 12 and 13 in short order, he will be the first driver to bring us a flying lap in this qualifying session. And as per the tradition, we ride on board with him to bring you the lap as he heads into the final corner then and looks to get the best possible exit to head down towards turn number 1. So charging out of the final corner, the hairpin, and heading to that timing line here, making his way up towards the braking zone. Here's the case, accelerating all the way up to full 5th gear here, depending on the gearing of the car. 5th gear, I believe, in the BMW M4. And as he brakes his way into turn 1, looking for the right-hand board, the 100-metre board, coming down to 3rd gear, rolling the car over the apex, and then switching it back to the right-hander to clattering over the apex curve there, and just having full commitment on the steering and the throttle as he clears the apex and now charges down towards turn number 3. In the long run here, it'll be the case looking to his left there for the 100-metre board, breaking down the gear, which trail braking through turn number 3 into 4 at this point, right in that apex curve in 2nd gear, and then braking into the hairpin at turn number 5 in 1st gear at this point, and immediately getting back on the throttle, opening up the corner entry there for turn number 6, balancing the throttle and now accelerating out. It's got to be full commitment here, and now bringing the car to the right before swinging it over the apex curve of turn number 7 and flat out now. the way down this back straight. And of course, at this point, it will be the case that our 6-cylinder, 3-litre engines of our BMW M4s will be heading all the way up to 6th gear. They'll be heading up towards their highest possible speeds. And Ryan Cooper at this point just has to gradually bring the car little by little over to the left-hand side of the circuit. But this gives him a bit of breathing room here, albeit it doesn't give the engine any breathing room, it must be said. But now, line up for turn number 8, looking for his brake marker at the 50-metre board, down a gear in 5th gear, and rolling the car onto the apex curve there before getting back on the throttle and bringing the car back to the racing line for turn number 9. A long right-hander here that feels as though the corner goes on forever, and it does. And there's finally the apex. It's a very late apex in 3rd gear. We're accelerating out of the corner now, heading up towards turn number 10, breaking down the gearbox here to 2nd gear, and much like turn number 9, a very late apex. It's a hidden apex until you see it right at the last moment, and now flat out through the kink of 11, the right-hander before heading up into turn number 12. A left-hander where you have to brake across the corner here and look for the apex, which is very late, much like turns 9 and 10, we should say. And now into the turn 13 hairpin here, the right-angled hairpin, and as he rolls his way out of the corner in 1st gear, now charging to the timeline. It hasn't been a perfect lap by Ryan Cooper, the car unsettled on those curves, but it's still been a good lap. And as he comes to that timeline, what's it going to be in terms of that time? Well, we see it will pop up on the board very shortly, or will it? No, it's an invalid lap, in fact, and we're trying to understand where he picked up that invalid lap. I think it may have actually been at turn number 1 where he took a bit too much apex curve at turn 1 and therefore invalidated the lap. But by comparison here, Hubert Szymanski currently setting the provisional pole of a 54.342, albeit, of course, it is very early days, but it's first blood to Hubert Szymanski here as he makes his way now into turn number 3, and so plenty of time to go as Harry Phillips demotes him to P2, sets to the 54.315. And we've got very nice conditions here this evening at the Paul Ricard circuit. 24-degree ambient, 24-degree track, which is quite ideal. And also we do have sunshine, brilliant sunshine, a little bit of wind as well, which may help some of our drivers on their respective laps. Now, ideally, you'd want perhaps the track temperature to be a little bit low in the ambient, around, say, the 18-degree mark for the best possible laps. When it's a bit cooler, those lap times come together a bit more smoothly, but the 24 degrees is nothing to complain about, and I think most of our drivers will not mind the conditions here as they make the way on around. But looking at further afield there, it is the case we see Kieran Sharp from the Sim Racing Collective, and Kieran Sharp, of course, the Briton from the TSRC team, a very fast driver in his own right, and, well, he hasn't quite had, I think, the races that are reflective of his calibre so far this season, but today he's definitely coming out in full force. Currently P6 here and being pushed along by the looks of by the Worldfix Racing drivers here. I think a little bit of contact between the two of them. Well, it may not be quite contact, but definitely being ghosted very heavily there by the Worldfix Racing cars. They make the way through the right-hander, and we're just trying to see who that is tucked in behind. We can't quite get the door number there, but it is the case of Kieran Sharp just losing the rear end very slightly into turn number 8 there. And also turn number 9, it's the case the rear just coming up a little bit, but that's the brake bias for you. He's likely to be running just a bit more towards the rear of the car to bring the car on through, but as he does, it's that fine balancing act of the rear coming loose versus keeping the power on to settle that rear end on down. Because remember, these are front engine rear wheel drive machines, and it is the case the power goes those rear wheels and stuff, so you've got to tap the throttle a little bit under braking in order to settle the rear down. It's what we would like to refer to as overlaying, effectively, where you have the brakes on but also the throttle very slightly in order to stabilise that rear end. It's something that's more used in mid-engine rear wheel drive cars where the engine is located behind the driver, not in front of them, but it does work in front engine rear wheel drive cars when you are trying to do heavy trail braking into corner apex. But as we look here from Kieran Sharp now to Liam Page from SOP Motorsport rolling his way on through, it is the case that if you are tuning in right now, whether it is on YouTube or twitch.tv, do not be shy. Feel free to say hi. We've got both chats available to us. Let us know who you're cheering on, what your predictions are for the race, and indeed anything else that you may be observing or your thoughts going into the race. But it is going to be an absolutely brilliant one, and we can see already Szymanski responding to Harry Phillips and also to his teammates such as Headwind, for example, also DC Sim Racing by setting the first 53 of the session at 53.882. And can anybody else go into those 53s with him? I'm sure somebody will, but it is the case. Who will it be? And could we see an upset? Could we see some surprises here today? And speaking of surprises, well, we do have what is Matt Camilio here, and the SOP Motorsport driver. I believe this is his debut in the series as well. He's currently P6 behind Kieran Sharp by a margin of only what is half a tenth. And of course, the thing is, with our teams here, they can bring drivers in and out. It is the case that the team, as they entered into the series, as they entered into round number 1 at Kyalami, they can swap drivers around. And of course, we've seen Ryan Cooper for Wild Things Racing join Matt Camelio here for SOP Motorsport. And that throws a conundrum into the mix as well, because you can imagine the teams will want their best possible drivers for each and every round where they can. If they've got a specialist who runs very well, say Paul Ricard like today, that's where they want to deploy that driver. It is, of course, the fact it is a team exercise, but they always want to come out all guns firing where they can, and Camelio here definitely doing that. As meanwhile, going P2 there, Tim at Troket and the DC Sim Racing driver in the number 997 car, 2 attempts now of Szymanski, and just missing out on a 53 there. That was a 54.052. I think he feels as though it's in him, and he may be still trying to burn some fuel out the car, as we do have that ambient temperature already dropping a degree centigrade. But the good news is that track condition is optimum. We've got a good amount of rubber being laid down so far from the warm-up session and also from the support races earlier today. And as a result, it does mean that Troket here, and indeed all of his colleagues out of the circuit and his rivals, will be feeling as though the circuit is in its grippiest state it can be, and that will give them the best possible laps available. A bit further down here, have we got any shock or surprises so far? Well, we do have Sir Fosh down in P16 at the moment, the Salt Community Racing driver, who we've typically seen in his qualifying sessions. He normally delivers a lap quite late on into the session. That's indicative of where he's going to be on the grid as he makes his way through 10 and 11 there, having to go past the SOP Motorsport car that politely moved out the way, and I believe that was Bunyan moving to the side then, the number 4 car. But as he makes his way through turn number 12 here, what will Fosh do this time as he comes through the final corner? The Triple A driver, of course, one of those drivers who's really focused in terms of just learning the car, and we've talked to him in those post-round interviews where it's been the case, he's saying that he's still learning this BMW M4. It's different from the machine he normally drives, where we've been more focused normally on the Ferrari 488 and GT3 Evo and GT3 class racing here on Assetto Corsa Competizione. But indeed, he has adapted to the car, and he's showing it as he moves up to P11. There's still 7 tenths off a pole, but he is creeping closer to that top 10 and indeed that top 5, which is where he wants to be. But looking further afield, it is the case. One driver who's yet to set a time, one of 3 drivers who's yet to put a time on the board. One-ton racing teams at Leighton Austin here, and we've only got 5 minutes left on the clock, and you can imagine the QRT driver at this point, who we've typically seen have difficulty in qualifying. He's normally gone better in the races compared to qualifying. It is the case, the 111 driver at this point just trying to find that lap. He's had a couple of invalid laps, but to be fair, it is so easy to get it wrong at Paul Ricard. It looks a straightforward circuit. Indeed, the coloration around the circuit make you think that you're parking up in a very colourful parking lot, as some like to refer to it, but it is the fact that coloration actually represents different types of surfaces beyond the track limits. It is the case that the blue surface in particular, I can't remember the exact compound, but it's not your typical runoff area compound. It's a slightly different material to help aid drivers get grip and get back onto the circuit, and the red surface in particular is actually an incredibly grippy surface, and the reason it's further out is for the simple reason that as our drivers go off circuit, if they go to that red area, they're likely to be heading towards the wall, and the purpose of that red surface is to provide the ultimate grip for our drivers to get the car back under control and be able to slam the brakes on to retard the car and bring it back on to the circuit. A little bit of trivia I found out earlier today when I was doing some research on those coloured lines with regards to the Paul Ricard circuit, but definitely those colours actually mean something. They're not just there for show, and also to represent the colours of the French flag. That's Leighton Austin here. It's yet to set a lap time. He goes around once again, and much like him, Josh Millington from the Sim Racing Collective has yet to set a time as he makes his way down this back straight. But I do like the way that the Sim Racing Collective are running that standard black-grey livery, but then with the colorations towards the rear of the car here to emphasise each of their drives. I think that's a very clever touch with regards to the car. Like Wild Things Racing, and indeed wonderful liveries of all of our drivers. That was Millington here on an outlap doing some side-to-side weaving. He's going to leave it all to the last moment to try and deliver what is that ultimate lap time. But as we look from here to Menno van der Molen here, we can see it is the case. The DC Sim Racing driver making his way through turn number 6 and into 7 there as he comes through the apex of 7 as he heads on down the straight. And right now in P13, this is normally where he sees himself in qualifying. He's normally seen himself a lot further up the order, and speaking of making their way further up the order, I can tell you that the top 2 right now is a Salt Community Racing lockout of Hubert Szymanski and Samir Fosh. Fosh jumping up to P2, and we said he would in the end bring those lap times through to fruition, but it is the case. It's then Kieran Sharp who's moved up to P3, and Harry Phillips still there on a 54.010 in P4 as it currently stands. Menno van der Molen at this point, I think he feels as though there's a bit more time out there in the car. Can he find it? That is the question that he's trying to answer as he rolls his way through at turn number 9 here, and as he brings the car around. A very nice smooth line there from Van der Molen, but it looks smooth. Is that going to be the proof in terms of lap time as he heads into turn number 10? Well, so far, my instincts would tell me that this is looking to be quite a nice lap. Then I do look to my timing information. It is the case he's not actually improving on this lap, and he may have to go again if he wants to find that improvement. He hasn't got long left to find that lap time, and or is anybody going faster right now or able to improve? Well, we do have one driver who's on an improvement lap, and that is Jonathan Atkinson from the Sim Racing Collective. He's currently 3 tenths up at his previous best, which was a 55.210, and as he makes his way out of the final corner, can the Briton then jump further up the field? Well, 3 tenths would see him jump up into what would be potentially P15, P16. And in fact, P17 in the end, it's not enough to jump ahead of Ryan Cooper in P16. But as he parks up and jumps to the pits, we look to Mark Bunyan here, and the SOP Motorsports driver, P21, currently crosses that timeline. He does not improve with 2 minutes left on the board, but right now it is going the way of Salt QT Racing. You have Hubert Smansky here, who's the focus of our cameraman's attention, currently P1 on a 53.812, and that's the last lap he set, and he's currently heading towards an even faster lap here, with a bit of toe off of the car in front, and I believe that's why the Formula Racing League cars that's politely moved out of the way. He doesn't have to if he's on a fast lap, but Szymanski there being given the space, and as he rolls his way out of the final corner, a bit of a slow approach to the apex, but to be fair, he's brought the car around, and I think this is going to be a slight improvement as he comes to that timeline. It is, it's now 53.762, and then Icket Hedlund in the pits right now. He's not going to go out again. He's currently P2 for Salt QT Racing, the German P2, and then Samuel Foch right now, Sir Foch, in his case P3, and well, if they can achieve this top 3 lockout, then it will be all to Kieran Sharp to really try and put a thorn in the side of Salt QT Racing on that opening lap. And Sharp just making his way right now down this back straight as he heads past our cameraman into turn number 8. And as he does, well, can he find a way to upset what is looking to be a very strong day for Salt QT Racing here at Paul Ricard? Well, it's all on him, and Harry Phillips in the pit lane will not be delivering another lap. P5's the best he's going to achieve here, and this is definitely right now going one particular way, as our reigning champions of Salt QT Race definitely coming out at full force here today. But of course, qualifying is just one part of the racing. The other part, of course, is the race itself. 90 minutes, and anything could happen over 90 minutes until our drivers get to that checkered flag. So let's not count our chickens yet, as they say. And Kieran Sharp here making his way through the final corner here, heading on towards another lap. He'll have 20 seconds to get to the line. He'll comfortably get there with about 15 seconds to go. And as he does, we ride on board here with Kieran Sharp for his final flying lap. Well, in fact, does he? No, he parks it up. He's had enough. He's not going to be doing another lap, so he's going to park it on the sideways. And meanwhile, we do look then to what is our number 105 driver here of Jonathan Reed from SOP Motorsport. The livery doesn't seem to have loaded today for the SOP driver, but as he makes his way there out of turn number 2, it is the case the Briton here coming out in force for his team, currently P10. And well, now the 15 minutes are up and all those lap times are being confirmed, and I can tell you that Szymanski and Hedlund are currently in the pit lane, P1, P2, with Foch out on circuit right now and improving. And here is Foch coming to the line. Does he improve? He moves up to P2 then, ahead of his teammate, but can anybody else upset Salt QT Race's top 3 right now? Kieran Sharp and Harry Phillips cannot. They're P4, P5 in the pit lane. What about Christoph Semin as he makes his way then through the final couple of quarters through turn number 12? He's got a bit of dirty air off of the QRT. No, in fact, that's turn number 10 there, not turn number 12. They look similar based on the perspective, but it is the case that making his way through turn number 11 now and up into 12. He's got the QRT machine in front. I don't think that's going to hurt him too much upon reflection, albeit it may do give him a little bit of a draft out the final corner. And as he heads to the timeline here, where he's not improving, I don't think Semin's going to be going any higher than P6 as he crosses that timeline. No, he does not improve. P6 is where he will stay. What about Menno van der Molen here, the next driver to come through to complete his qualifying session? Will the Dutchman making his way then through turn number 12 and up towards 13? He's currently 3 tenths faster than his previous best. If that's the case, as he misses his braking point there for the final corner and oversteps the mark, and that destroys the 3 tenths he was gaining over the course of the lap. And in the end, will he improve at all? He improves to take P9 off Yannick Kurtz, but it's not enough to get him up into that top 5, and that would have been a top 5 lap if he'd finished it the way he'd started. Jonathan Reed comes on out there. Can he improve from P11? He is the 10th up on his previous best. The signs are looking good for a top 10 as he crosses that timeline. It's a P9 for Jonathan Reed, but it is pole position for Salt QT Races. Hubert Szymanski, his first pole of the season, with Sir Foch alongside him on the front row, and Icket Hedlund making it a Salt QT Racing top 3, and Kieran Sharp then the best of the rest outside side of the Salt team in P4. But my goodness, it is the case. It is going one way today in qualifying, and we'll have to wait and see whether that's the way it will go in the race. But in terms of surprises, it is the case in the end. We talked about Leighton Austin earlier on. He's qualified P22, and we are now waiting for that transition to the grid for the purposes of our race. But there are some surprises to be sure, and not all of them welcome, but it is the case that Salt QT Race is definitely coming out on top here in the qualifying session. But as we do wait for that transition to the grid, we can see all of our drivers' cars lined up in the pit lane. The extensive pit lane, of course, at Paul Ricard. And now, let's take you through that grid from head to bottom. As it is the case, we now move that data off screen. And, well, let's take you from the front row all the way down. We've got 39 drivers taken to this grid. And let's introduce them one by one. So starting on pole position for Salt QT Racing is the Polish driver of Hubert Szymanski in the 898 car, taking that pole in the end by a small margin ahead of his teammate Sir Fosh for Salt QT Racing as well. They lock out the front row, leading the championship, of course, Salt QT Racing by 106 points, and if they can pull this off, they'll be leading by much more come the end of tonight. Icket Headwind starts off row number 2 for Salt QT Racing. The German driver joined by the Sim Racing Collective's Kieran Sharp in P4, and the Briton will be looking to try and put himself between the top 3 as soon as possible at the start of this race. Then on row number 3, Harry Phillips from Wild Things Racing. He'll have to go some if he wants to make it free on the bounce, but when I spoke to him in the build-up to tonight, he was saying that he was hoping to target a top 5 as a minimum, if not the podium, and the Wild Things Racing driver here will be doing well to hold on to that P5 come the end of the first lap, given the ferocity of the competition. He has Christoph Samin alongside, and the lead DC Sim Racing driver from Belgium, P6, and Samin, we know, is a fast charger at the start of the races. Behind them on row number 4, we have DC Sim Race's Tim Troquet from the Netherlands, and he is joined by Liam Page from SOP Motorsport. Liam Page doing very well in qualifying, putting in a blinder lap to come P8. The Briton is then followed up by Jonathan Reed from SOP Motorsport on row number 5 for P9, the Briton, and he is joined by Menno van der Molen from DC Sim Racing. The Dutchman completes the top 10. Yannick Kurt starts P11 for DC Sim Racing. DC Sim Racing did a great job of focusing their drives around the latter half of the top 10 and just outside of it. And then we have Matt Camelio from SOP Motorsport line up P12. Row number 7 is made up of Tom Davidson from Rapid Drivers Club. He's the lead driver in this grid, and he's joined on that row by Michael Races from the FRL Racing team. And keep your eyes out for the Formula Racing League livery. It's changed slightly, a new livery for the second half of the season, and it's looking very, very sharp indeed. Then behind them on row number 8, we have Traction Dave from Formula Racing League, and he is joined by his teammate of Marco Keddy from Switzerland. The Formula Racing team drivers coming out strong to be around that P15 position. Ryan Cooper on his debut lines up on our 9th row, P17 from the Netherlands for Wild Things Racing, and he is joined on that row by Jonathan Atkinson from the Sim Racing Collective, who's in P18, the Briton. Then, to complete our first 10 rows, on row number 10, we have Matt Leyland from RIP Racing Club, the Briton being joined by Josh Millington, and, well, both teams will be looking to have a good result to turn around their run of fortune. Alex Nunes then starts off P21, starting our 11th row of the Portuguese for Rapid Drivers Club, and he is joined by the lead driver of Quantum Racing Team, and that is Leighton Austin, the Briton here in the number 111 car, starting P22. We then have Wojciech Nurverth, the Salt QT Racing driver. He'll be starting P23, and the Czech driver be joined on that row by Andrew Pike from the Sim Racing Collective. And Andrew Pike, a fast racer, hasn't gone his way in qualifying, but watch out for him. He's definitely one who will try to find places in the race early on. Randy Retnandito starts P25 for Rapid Drivers Club. The Polish driver there starts off our 13th row, joined by Mark Bunyan from SOP Motorsport. In P26 is the Briton. And then on row number 14, we have Jordan Cotton from RIP Racing Club, the Briton in P27, being joined by Quantum Racing Team's Ian Hall, who starts in P28 from the United Kingdom. Richard Pixley starts off our 15th row for Wild Things Racing, the number 7 driver there, who already was one of the charging stars at Mount Panorama. If it were not for an early instant, he starts P29. He's got it all to do from row number 15, joined by Michael Van Rees from the Formula Racing League Racing Team, starting P30, the Dutchman. And then on row number 16, we have Chase Goodall from RP Racing Club, the American, being joined by Cornelius Vilbinger from Rapid Drivers Club, the German, starts P32. Callum Conde starts P33 for RIP Racing Club, the Briton, and is joined on the 17th row by Drew Matthews from Half Fast Gaming. The American driver there started P34. And then we have David Hester from Half Fast Gaming. It does seem as though Half Fast Gaming really occupying these back rows, and that has been a bit of a trend in qualifying, but they come through on the race. David Hester starts off what is our 18th row, and he is joined, the American, by his teammate of what is Steve Endres from Canada. Behind them, we have Aurelien Cruz from Wild Pigs Racing. The Frenchman started P37 and joined on that 19th row by Jeff Trujillo. The American there started P38 for Half Fast Gaming. And then on our final row, starting last but not least in P39, having not set a qualifying time as I'm to understand it, Stephen Bain from Quantum Racing Team, the Briton, starts at the back of the field. But you can imagine he will be looking to gain as many places as possible over the distance. But as we look through the field here, indeed, all of our BMWs in full splendour, which we love to see. We work our way gradually up towards the front of the field, and it will be to Hubert Szymanski to take us away for the manual double file formation lap, after which when we come around to the start finish line next time around, it will be the case that we will have a manual double file rolling start, and it will be the Polishman of Szymanski who takes us to the green. But as they make the way off the line one by one right now, our drivers of course will be looking to try and get as much temperature into those tyres and those brakes, trying to get those tyres up to pressure, to comfortable pressure, to get themselves underway at the start when they come around next time. And in terms of our conditions, as we said earlier, there's no rain on the forecast. We've actually got quite a light amount of cloud, if anything, today. I think it was the case in the predictor. There was somewhere in the region of about 5% cloud expected. So you can imagine it's going to be brilliant sunshine for the majority of the race in here, and therefore these conditions are going to remain relatively static. Now, it is just gone 8 o'clock in the evening local time on the circuit, which means we will be heading into a little bit of night time, albeit we're not going to lose the sun completely. I don't think so. We may be close to, but over the course of the hour and a half of racing, we can expect that ambient temperature to gradually drop, and with it the track temperature will follow suit very gradually. But given the fact we have got dusk sunshine at the moment, that track temperature will stabilise quite nicely, and that means our drivers can evolve themselves into the race comfortably. They don't have to keep evolving against the conditions, and that's what you want in a race. And of course, what that means for us in terms of the viewers, indeed those tuned in, it may be the case that we see some drivers really settle in early and charge off in their respective position, but that's what it's all about. Of course, Paul Ricard, a circuit that takes no prisoners, with every aspect there to test the car and the driver. And as we see Szymanski make his way down the back straight here, we look from him to Ian Hall, who starts, well, not Ian Hall, that's Traction Dave, who starts from the pit lane. He did not make the 2 minute, or say the 5 minute countdown in terms of getting the car set on the grid, so that's very unfortunate for Dave. But meanwhile, we do ride on board here with Jordan Cotton, who'll be starting in the midfield here, P26, and well, he'll be thinking about the Briton. What can he do for this position outside the top 20 as they gradually make the way down this back straight? Indeed, he's got the Quantum Racing Team driver of Ian Hall behind him, who will have to go toe-to-toe with very early on as they all make their way weaving down here in single file formation here. And our drivers, of course, dragging the brakes as well to try and build up that brake temperature, particularly in those rear brakes, which take a lot of effort to get warmed up compared to the front brakes here. No, it's the front brakes that do the majority of the work in those heavy braking zones, and the rear brakes follow through. But right now, everybody waiting to go racing, everybody itching here, and I think I can get the gauge. It is the case, whether they're up at the front of the field or down towards the back of the field, they're expecting this one to be a very fiery race. And well, the Sim Racing Collective here, they have got multiple drivers inside that top 20, a couple of drivers also inside that top 10, none more so than what is Kieran Sharp, who starts on that P4. You can imagine for Kieran Sharp, it is going to be the case for him that he will feel as though he has got it all to do here today, and can he potentially snatch a podium as we see him making his way now down towards turn number 9 behind the Salt Community Racing trio. And as they head down into this corner, we'll soon be getting the field lined up into that manual double file formation, and that will be on the run through turn number 11 up into 12. And when we start to get that formation occurring, the emphasis will be on our drivers getting into position as soon as possible, and then delivering when we get to the green flag. But as we see here, watching Nuverf, the Czech Republic driver, making his way through as the corner. Now everybody giving up the speed up order here in terms of being told to get into position, and it is a bit of a hectic rush up towards that manual double file formation. But as they all come through, we look to the helicam, and in particular we look to our leader here, and you can see now the pack forming up here of 38 cars that will be starting in the rolling start, with of course Traction Dave starting from the pit lane. But as they all head on through the last couple of corners, the formation is almost complete here, and as the last couple of stragglers catch up, it is the case that everyone is now in place, and we are only one corner away from Hubert Szymanski taking us to the green for 90 minutes of racing in round 4 of the Community Super League Season 2. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 4 here at Circuit Paul Ricard as Hubert Szymanski tries to get a good start in the charge down towards turn number 1. And as they charge onto the brakes here, we can see the huge concertina effect already building. Harry Phillips trying to go aggressive on the inside versus Kieran Sharp a bit further back. Kieran Sharp actually on the outside then being squeezed a little bit wide. But as we look to the helicam here, all drives safely making it through. But look at Harry Phillips absolutely charging, and he's trying to squeeze between the two Stock Community Racing drivers, of which Szymanski and Fosh as they make their way into the corner, and as they make their way through turn number 3. In fact, that was Fosh and Headwind, I should say. It is the case that Phillips has found his way between the two of them as they roll the way on through, and Szymanski right now leading this race and trying to break away as there's the big concertina crush down into turn number 5, and as all drivers now make their way into 6. It is the case they all try and get on the throttle as soon as possible for the charge onto that back straight, and this is where we'll see for the first time who has focused their car around straight line speed, who's focused their car around downforce and a lack of straight line speed, and it is that long drag race. Oh goodness me, and it's a whack to the wall there for one of the Formula Racing League cars, and I believe that's Michael Races who's been involved in a whack, and well, was that contact another driver? I think he was turned there as they made the way on through, but we look from him to our leaders right now, and in particular, in fact, the battle here for what is P5 between Reed, Sharp and Troquet as they make the way into turn number 8, and Tim Troquet has gained multiple places since the start of this race. Keeps doing track limits there as we see Weather Bollards actually flying into the sky, and meanwhile we can see here it's the case of Jonathan Reed falling down, as meanwhile Yannick Kurtz goes up the inside for P8 as they roll their way through turn number 9 and up towards 10, but as they do, Minna van der Molen here also trying to get into the mix, and he can't find his way through, or can he? I think he can. I think he's going to force the issue versus Jonathan Reed on the inside into turn number 10. But as they roll the way through turn number 11, Reed stays strong here and keeps them at bay. And Yannick Kurtz, meanwhile, be hoping he can try and bring his teammate on through. But I think it is the case that Jonathan Reed has finally found his elbows and is now getting those elbows out very slightly. As Ryan Cooper, meanwhile, has gained a couple of places, moved up to P13 at the start of this race. So after one lap, it is the case that we have Hubert Szymanski who leads by 9/10 of a second versus Harry Phillips in P2, followed by Sir Fosh in P3. Then it's Christoph Samin in P4, followed by Tim Troquet P5, then Kieran Sharp P6, then we have Liam Page P7 here battling with Yannick Kurtz for P7 as they roll the way to turn number 1, and I think Kurtz is going to go around the outside to inside. He gets it done as a tap there, but it is the case that Yannick Kurtz gains another place, so Liam Page down to P8, and now he's got Jonathan Reed all over the back of him. Jonathan Reed literally salivating at the prospect here. He's thirsty for positions, and SOP Motorsport are coming out full offensive, albeit they're coming out full offensive between themselves as much as they are when it's the other teams, but you love to see it here. And Reed almost losing it there as he drops off the circuit and takes the sausage curves, and they unsettle the car so much. As you can see here, Camilio coming up the inside of his teammate and also trying to go round the outside of Minna van der Molen here through turn number 7, and that's the drag race down the back straight once again. It's 3 wide in the long charge down 2 kilometres straight, and as they make the way all the way out towards turn number 8 at this point, it's the case that Camilio will find himself on that inside line, but he's got no speed. He's got no straight line speed. You can see how he's dropping back already. Meanwhile, Ryan Cooper now is trying to come on through. He's trying to go around the outside of Davidson here in the run up towards turn number 8, and as they all come into the right hander, it's 3 wide in the rear of the picture, and in the end Davidson backs out then. I think Davidson doing the right thing, as otherwise that could have been an absolute calamity. As we see where the QRT machine's going well off, and I believe that was, I'm not absolutely sure who it was exactly, I think that was Leighton Austin getting it a bit wrong, but meanwhile just behind we can see that Josh Millington tucked in behind his teammate Jonathan Atkinson here for the Sim Racing Collective in the battle for P14, and as they roll the way through the left hander here, they're both scrambling to try and take P13 off of Tom Davidson as they make the way through turn number 10 once again. But as they do, it is the case here, the battling is in full force, and the midfield, much like the front of the field, is delivering on the action, and you love to see it as they make the way through turn at number 12, and as they roll on through, it is the case that we can see Renan Dito meanwhile in P19, the Rapid Drivers Club driver here trying to get into the fight, but further back Michael Van Rees here in P22, he's looking for that P21 of a Mark Bunyan, and as they make the way down towards turn number 1 here, we ride on board with Michael Van Rees as he looks to try and gain another position. But as he rolls his way across that timeline now onto lap number 3, and we've still got plenty of distance and time to go, of course, it is the case heading into the corner. The Dutchman really trying to go on the offensive here, and you can see how getting very close to the car, unsettled there over the apex curve of turn number 2, and he's had to back it off there. The rear actually starting to slide out on him, and I think Van Rees not feeling too comfortable in the car at this point in time as he rolls his way into the right hander, a turn at number 3 at in 4 now, and as they come through the left into right sequence, it's a very tricky, prickly sequence in the fact that the car's constantly actually going through direction changes from start to finish in this sequence of corners. It's now the opportunity for them to calm them down, and we'll see whether Van Rees has got the car set up for straight line speed, or whether it's set up for corners or somewhere in between as they make their way out of turn number 7. And well, Van Rees not really gaining here in the draft. He's actually staying stationary, and I think this is a sign that the car's made for the corners as he makes his way down this back straight. But as he does, we look from him to a little bit further up the road, and in particular we look to Liam Page here, who right now holding on to P8, the Britain for SOP Motorsport. A bit further behind, we can see how it is the case that Atkinson trying to go on the offensive against Davidson, at the same time trying to deal with the fact his teammate Millington's also taking a peek. As we see a bit further back there, that is Richard Pixley almost going beyond the track limits there, and coming out of turn number 8. You can tell that by the bollards there, which get knocked over very easily, but they've got automated sensors in them which will tell our drivers that they picked up a track limit infringement as soon as they hit those bollards. But as they roll their way through turn number 10, our drivers right now will be focusing just as much about pushing it to the limit as they will the track limits themselves, as Rettandito and Alex Nunes both right on the heels of Richard Pixley here, and Pixley right now is causing from P17 downwards to fall away from the top 15. There's no doubts about that, but I think Pixley at this point in the race may have a lot more fuel in the car compared to, say, Nunes and also Rettandito as they roll the way through the right-hander. And I believe Nunes has actually been passed by Rettandito on the latter half of this lap. They've changed places, the two Rapid Drivers Club drivers, and now they're trying to work together to go hunting after the World Things Racing driver. As they make their way down towards turn number 1, we look a bit further up the field and see Josh Millington here battling with Tom Davidson, and Davidson has been passed already by Atkinson, and now Millington's trying to do what his teammate did moments ago. And as they make their way out to turn number 2, we ride on board here with Millington, who tries to look for the move into turn number 3. He takes a beat. This is going to be bold if he goes for it, but I don't think he's going to be given the opportunity here. It's trail brake into 3, then roll the car into 4, and Davidson could just simply outbrake his rival there. But as they now come into turn 5, this is where the body language will change on the situation, because if Millington can get a good run through 6, and he'll have the draft, of course, he may be able to slip through his way past in the run down the back straight after 7. But now, will we see Davidson absolutely fly here, or will we see Millington be the one to fly? In fact, it looks a little bit static here. I think the two of them both been affected from subsequent toes, and at the same time as well both set about the same rear wing on the car, although I think Millington's actually slightly falling back here as they make their way down on the charge. But you can see the field here in full force coming charging down this back straight. Everyone's trying to stay together as close as possible, as we're hearing that Jordan Cotton's had a bit of a moment, and Iker Hedwine was involved in an incident earlier in the race. We didn't quite see what happened to the Salt Community Racing driver, but he has dropped all the way down to P32, and well, that is very unfortunate for the Assault driver, as meanwhile Menno van der Molen going up the inside there of what is Camilio for P10, getting the move done at turn number 9, and we're going to get a replay of that. Well, here is our replay from only moments ago, and we're focusing in particular on Menno van der Molen, running in P11 at the time. Now, as they made their way into turn number 8 here, you can actually see how it's the case that Camilio a bit too close there to Jonathan Reed, his teammate, and as they rolled their way into the right-hander here, I think in the dirty air, he was just disrupted under braking, and that's how Menno van der Molen got the move done, and van der Molen, they're capitalising on opportunity, and that's the thing with these GT3 cars, they have quite a bit of downforce on them and aerodynamic packages, and when you run that close to whether it's your teammate or your rival, the dirty air coming off them where they're punching that hole in the air in front of you, it can just unsettle the car. Particularly the more rear wing you're running, it is the case it can really hurt the balance of the car, and I think that's exactly what's just happened to Camillo. He's been hurt by running so close to the back of Jonathan Reed, and as a result now he's lost the position. But as we do return to those live pictures, we say hello in the Twitch chat to lowpower73526 asking us how's it going. Well, it's absolutely going brilliantly so far. Brilliant racing here at Paul Ricard, and what we also say hello to Forzy in the YouTube chat, and well, I hope you guys are doing well. And to all those of you tuning in who haven't said hello, remember you do not need to be shy, feel free to say hi. And well, Leighton Austin pointing the wrong way there, coming out to turn number 5. I wonder if he's been in the woods or where he dropped off circuit, tried to get the power on. Let's take a look back. Well, at the time, it was Leighton Austin battling to be inside the top 20 here, and he was caught behind the 131 car. I think, in fact, that was the 13 car of Alex Nunes. Oh, goodness, we had a bit of contact between the two of them there. Leighton Austin going in very hot into turn 3, and as he came through for Nunes, gave him the tap round, and, well, that is very unfortunate. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets reported to the stewards post-race there by Quantum Racing Team. They will not be pleased with that, given their driver had been turned all the way around, but definitely those elbows are coming out between drivers further down the field, and Austin has been hurt by it as he makes his way now back up to speed and through turn 8, and we return to those live pictures. But meanwhile, we can see here in the battle for P35, Jordan Cotton tried to defend versus Iker Hedwine as they make their way through turn 8 and down towards turn number 9. Further back there, we do see Marco Keddy battling with Matt Leyland for P37 as well, up the inside into turn 9. and takes the position, does the Swiss. And right now Leyland having a difficult race, and Drew Matthews is the last of our runners a bit further back, but indeed we still have 39 out of 39 starters running in this race. And Nick Edwin up the inside there on the exit of turn number 10 as they flick their way through 11. You can see a flash of lights there as Keddy tries to go around the outside of Cotton, and Cotton not happy with the way the move's been done by Edwin, but I think he's going to have to deal with it at this point, given the fact that Keddy's now up his inside into the final corner. And Marco Keddy, well, he hasn't had a great race, but he's definitely showing he can make those moves as they drag race their way down towards turn number 1 here. Of course, they're battling for the... Oh, goodness me! And Keddy turned there into the wall, and it's a double whack. And, well, I wonder there where he just got caught on the front end of Leyland's car. It is the case that the RP Racing Club driver has been in the wars. That's a very difficult one for us to dissect, but definitely the two of them came together, and we've got a drive-through penalty, an automated drive-through penalty here for Michael Van Ries, the Formula Racing League driver, and that is for track limit violations. He's already picked up 3, he's picked up a 4th, and it is the case the automated stewarding system has given him a drive-through penalty. Do keep in mind, of course, there is no live stewarding for this race event. Indeed, this whole series, all stewarding is done post-race as reported by our drivers, and time penalties and subsequent penalties are handed out in accordance. But as we see here, it is the case our P19 driver having a difficult day of things. Andrew Pine, meanwhile, we said watch out for him in the race. He's looking to gain potentially what is P21 here for Renandito as he makes his way around the outside of the Rapid Drivers Club driver into turn number 8, and a bit further back there you can see Ian Hall going around his teammate of what is Crows as they make the way through 8 and down towards turn number 9. Good teamwork there from Quantum Racing team to swap the place and not lose too much time. I think Ian Hall feels as though at this point he's got a lot more pace in the car, and the team are letting him play with it as they make the way out to 9 and up towards 10. But here's the case, Andrew Pike definitely, he's up to P21, gaining places gradually. He's one to watch out for here. I think he's going to continue to push on. But we focused a lot on the field in the mid-pack. What about our leaders? And we can see here as we look to our leaders, he goes on to lap number 7. Szymanski right now for Salt Community Racing, leading by 1.7 seconds over Harry Phillips right now, the Wild Things Racing driver here, after making that blistering start to move up into what was P2. It is the case, the Wild Things Racing driver now up into that P2, chased after Szymanski, but then we have Sir Vosh here in P3. As a Salt Community Racing driver, normally I think this really is his place, if you will, on this grid. It would seem he's always running in P3 in the races at the very start, and he feels very comfortable here that he has got to worry about the fact that he does have Christoph Samin, who is gradually lingering in the distance here in P4, the DC Sim Racing driver, and well, the Belgian breaking away from his teammate Tim Troquet, who completes our top 5. Now, the interesting thing about Tim Troquet in particular is he does seem to be falling off the pace a little bit with regards to his lap times. His last lap was a 55.705. Our top 4 running in the high 54s, and then we have Kieran Sharp here running in the low 55s at 55.270. And as he makes his way down this back straight here, I think Kieran Sharp, who was swamped at the start, he found himself pinned on the outside into turn 1 and lost 2 places before he cleared corner apex. I think he's trying to come back into this race right now. So whilst Kieran Sharp has lost out quite significantly, don't count him out here for a chance for a podium. He is looking good. I think he's just needed the time and space to settle himself down after a difficult start, and now he's started to deliver. But speaking of delivering, it is the case that Liam Page here, alongside his teammate Camelio behind SOP Motorsport, both right now charging after what is the P9 driver Menno van der Molen, and we just see they're making his way up into turn number 10, and as they roll the way into the left-hander here, Liam Page being hounded a little bit by his team. I think there might be a position swap going on very shortly, so I think Camelio at this point actually feels more comfortable with the two of them. But meanwhile, a bit further back, we do have Tom Davidson, who's just found his way past his teammate Alex Nunes and moved up into what it, well, no, in fact, not Alex Nunes, my apologies, found his way past Richard Pixley and has moved up into P15. Richard Pixley, of course, of Wild Things Racing, and Pixley's had a relatively okay start. Tom Davidson's definitely had a flying start by comparison, but both of these drivers really pushing on right now. And have we got any anomalies in terms of our lap times here, in terms of drivers who seem to be out driving their relative position on the field? Not right now. Everybody seems to be on the pace we would expect, although I say that Jonathan Atkinson just moves up to P17 there, making his way past David Hester, the half-fast gaming driver, and as they make their way down, we've got Michael Van Ries into the pit lane to serve his drive-through penalty. He, of course, had to serve that within 3 laps of it being assigned to him, including the lap it was assigned on. But Jonathan Atkinson right now under pressure here as we ride on board and look back from the Sim Racing Collective driver. Running P26, he has got David Hester, Traction Dave, and Leighton Austin behind the 3 of them there, as Atkinson gets a really solid run out of turn number 2 and just disappears up the road. and that's what you've been hoping for. But you can see here the HFG driver there behind the David Hester getting a little bit too strong on the brakes into turn number 3. They're outbraking himself and understeering, and right now I think that Hester's going to be in a world of pain down this back straight if it's the case that Traction Dave can get a good run out the corner, for the simple reason that Dave is looking very fast, and as he does, he looks to the cutback here. As you can see, Hester comes across, but he gets covered off there as Hester covers it through, and as they make the way down this back straight, we can see Davis, there's a bit of contact between the two of them there. Well, it's the case they've got their elbows out once, we'll be fine with that. If they carry it on, I think the stewards won't be too pleased, but they seem to have calmed it down. But you can definitely see how it is the case that Hester really struggling. They're going to go 3 wide here, surely, and meanwhile Leighton Austin here goes round the pair of them into the corner, and that shows you that Quantum Racing Team machine is made for straight line speed. He just came out of nowhere and went round the pair of them, albeit for P27, but still it's a move, and at the same time it's a double move. And Leighton Austin, well, you definitely know right now, if you want somebody to watch out for on those straights, the Quantum Racing Team driver is your guy, as he makes his way into turn number 10 at this point. Now he's hunted after Atkinson, Conde and Gross as they make their way in towards turn number 11, but as they do at this point, rolling their way on through, we do look from them to what is Matt Leyland down in P34 here, and he's just recently found his way past Michael Races. And the RP Racing Club driver, indeed the RP Racing Club team, having a difficult race so far. All their drivers have really struggled at the start of this race. They're trying to find their way into this race. And Jordan Cotton in P36 right now, really hooked up behind the back of Michael Races in P35, the Formula Racing League driver, as they make their way towards the end of this lap. We are 16 minutes clear, and as we continue to make our way into this first half an hour, we're not expecting any scheduled stops for the time being, because we don't have the pit window open. Of course, that will open at the end of the first half an hour. It will be the case when that clock says there's 60 minutes remaining, the pit window will open, and it will close when the clock says there's 30 minutes of racing remaining. And Jordan Cotton right here is not thinking about that. He's thinking about making that place whilst he's got an opportunity to do so, and he makes his way up the inside here for P35, gets the move done. A nice move there from Jordan Cotton, and brings it to a close. But meanwhile, Ryan Cooper, something's gone very wrong for Ryan Cooper. He's losing places like a stone. Let's take a look back. Well, this was only moments ago as we take a look back 30 seconds ago, and Ryan Cooper coming through turn number 5 there, and it's a bit of contact, I think, with the Sim Racing Collective machine. It's a little bit of an elbows out moment, and well, that is very unfortunate for Ryan Cooper, who then has to back off on the apex of 7 for the fact that he did have there Nerva make his way around the outside, and if he committed to that apex, he would have sent Nerva flying. And then Nerva, by comparison here, we had the run on what was Josh Millington as they made the way on up, and we return to live pictures now. Did he make the move? No, he didn't make the move. It was the case that Millington held him off for the time being, and as they make the way out to turn number 10 and into 11, we return to these live pictures. It is the case that right now Josh Millington under pressure, but the thing is, and what's very interesting here, what we also saw briefly in the background of that replay was the switch of the SOP Motorsport drivers in P10, P11. Matt Camelio has moved up to P10. Liam Page has dropped behind him to P11. They needed to make that switch. Camelio was the faster of the two drivers, and they have definitely made it happen as they now make their way onto lap number 10. But indeed, the battle's in the top 10 opening up right now. And speaking of opening up, we look for P13 to P6 in the form of Kieran Sharp here as he chases after what is Tim Troquet in front of him. And Sharp has been catching Troquet constantly over the last couple of laps. That last lap, he took 2/10 out of him, but of course now it is the case that Sharp right in that wall of dirty air, and the Sim Racing Collective drive's now got to unlock another conundrum, which is he's got to run in dirty air and get as close as possible to make a pass. And as they make the way down this back straight, you can see Troquet doing a little bit of weaving from side to side. He's allowed one major weave before he returns that racing line. He'll do so very gradually now. Of course, he is only allowed the one weave as per the standard courtesy rule. And as they make the way down towards turn number 8 here, he calms it down as would be expected, and now makes his way up towards turn number 8. And you can see that Sharp is gradually closing here little by little. And I think both cars are running a very similar aero package today. And it is the case that Troquet, they're feeling that pinch, and that's why he had to do that initial bob and weave in order to cut a little bit of the toe off of Kieran Sharp's car. But as they make the way into turn number 9, you can see how as they roll their way through the long right-hander, how Sharp gets a better run through the apex there. He's definitely hooked up in that car, and as he makes his way into the left of what is turn number 10, he's all over the back of his rivals. We ride on board here with the finish Sharp's closing at the wrong times. You don't want to be that close as you're clearing the apex of 10, because then you can't get the throttle down. And instead, what he's got to try and do is get the power out the corner to then close up. And this is what he's going to focus on now as we roll our way through turn number 13 on board with the Sim Racing Collective driver. But again, as he exits the corner, he just cannot get the nose round enough to be able to deploy that power. He's got the pace, there's no doubt about it. But now he's hitting the wall of resistance, which is Tim Troquet, who is by no means an easy driver to pass. One of the hardest to pass we've seen this season. And as they make their way into turn number 1 here, Sharp's definitely got to try and find a way of getting Troquet to make a mistake, or just to unblock that pace in the car that's been knocked up. So we say hello to Jerry Racecar driver there in the YouTube chat. Hope you're doing well, Jerry. And indeed, this race right now really pushed on. And well, Tim Troquet, the driver from the Netherlands, showing his nuance, although he gets a little bit out of sorts there. Coming through turns 3 and 4, you can see he carried way too much speed into 3. That unsettled the car and caused it to understeer beyond the apex of 4. And this is what Kieran Sharp needs. He needs to run that. He needs to nail this turn 6. Can he do so? I don't think he's done enough here. He will gradually gain now, but again, I think he'll just be too far back. As you can see, Troquet again does that little bit of a weave before now straightening the car out. That one weaving is permitted, and the BV is using the rule. And as they make their way down this back straight, Sharp is getting closer and closer. You almost want to egg him on at this point. You might even want to rock back and forth in your seat. I'm not allowed to in the commentary box, so as it be the case, we'll hear a load of creaking on the seat. But Sharp is getting ever closer here. And will he look for the move into turn number 8? I don't think so. He's just too far back. But you see Troquet there steps a little bit beyond the apex, a little bit of understeer, but Sharp almost goes wide of the bollards there, and he has to wait his turn. No way through for Kieran Sharp for the time being, but he's inching ever closer as we look to the exterior pictures, and Troquet just absolutely right now being hounded. But to be fair, he's showing no signs of succumbing to this pressure for P5. And as they roll their way through turn number 10, he definitely knows he can park it on apex at turn number 10, because he can cause Kieran Sharp to fall backwards as they roll their way for 11 and up into 12. But as we look from then to Cornelius Philbinger here, it is the case that Philbinger battling for what is P29, finding its way past what is David Hester there. And as they make their way for the long right-hander, you see Matt Leyland coming on through. It is the case 2 drivers making their way past David Hester, the half-fast gaming driver in what is the purple yellow BMW M4. The American driver having a difficult run now after a great start to this race, gaining multiple positions, the number 64 driver. But I think now the pace in the car is being undermined, and as a result, he is falling backwards very gradually. The next driver trying to go after, of course, will be Jordan Cotton, who is in P32 at this time. But as they make the way on through and up towards turn number 12, it is the case Philbinger now has the RIP Racing Club driver and Matt Leyland behind him, and he'll be worried about what Leyland can do, given the fact that Leyland definitely has a lot of pace. He's just not been given the opportunity to show what he can do over the course of this race so far. He has been involved in a number of incidents, but as they make the way on towards another lap very shortly, we look from them to what is P16 driver Richard Pixley here, and the Wild Things Racing driver from the United Kingdom in what is the number 7 car. You can see just gradually chasing after his teammate Ryan Cooper, who's making his debut in the series today. And as they make the way through turn number 6 and up into 7, they're hunting down this battle for P12. And we look at Josh Millington here, the Sim Racing Collective driver, who's in P13, chasing after Neuwirth. And it should be said actually in regards to Neuwirth, the Sulcurity Racing driver in the 863 car, he's done a stellar job. Keep in mind, he started at the very end of the top 20. He's made his way up to P12 by simply staying out of trouble and gaining places little by little. It may have been the case he didn't qualify too well, but he's definitely unlocking the car right now. And as they make the way up into turn number 8, it is the case he has that pressure of Millington behind him. Millington looking very strong on the straightaway, but as soon as they come down to these corners, that's when Neuwirth seems to have that advantage. Although I say that, he goes very deep. And I think Millington's actually going to try and scythe up the inside here. They'll put him on the outside for the run into turn number 10. But Millington gets ahead there, and Josh Millington, well, the Briton absolutely planted as he made his way through 9. A very nice pass, a classic pass at the inside, the long right-hander, moving up into P12. But as they make the way now into turn number 12, I should say, the P12 driver at this point definitely looking to be enjoying the feel of the car right now. And we look from him back to that battle for P5. And I hate to say it, for those of you cheering on the Sim Racing Collective, it is the case that Tim Troquet from DC Sim Racing, the Dutchman, is still frustrating the Briton behind him as they make the way down towards turn number 3. And indeed, we have seen plenty of rivalries between British and Dutch drivers in motorsport in recent years. Perhaps the most prevalent one, of course, being Hamilton versus Verstappen in Formula 1. And it is the case here. I think we're going to see the Troquet-Sharp rivalry really come to a climax here today, given how close they're running together. And Kieran Sharp, to be fair, has not had an opportunity ability to run this strongly this season so far. Every round has been against him up to this round, and Troket by comparison has had strong rounds all the way through, but he's now finding the challenge of the TSRC driver behind him, and that is what it's all about here in this Community Super League. The teams going on against one another, and that's why they're all here. They're looking to represent as best as possible, and they're giving it everything. They're giving it 110%, if not more, and as they make their way down this back straight right now, they'll be thinking about one and only thing, which is where can I make the pass or where can I make the defense as they roll the way through the right-hander turnout. You can see the sparks flying up there from Kieran Sharp's car, the bottom grazing on the circuit surface, and that means he's right on the limit. But as we look from them to a little bit further down the order, we do look back to Menno van der Molen, another DC Sim Racing driver here, chasing after Jonathan Reed in front of him in the battle for P8, and indeed Reed trying to hound what is Molen's teammate here of Yannick Kurtz in P7, and it is the case, it's the DC Sim Racing sandwich with an SOP Motorsport filler in the battle for P7 through to 9 as they roll the way up into turn at number 12. But meanwhile, as they do, we must look back to Randy Renandito here, who finds himself battling with Ian Hall, and in fact he is the case, he's just made the move versus Ian Hall in the run through turn number 8, and we take a look back. Well, this was the pair of drivers in that battle for P20, and Renandito on the inside, and Ian Hall really squeezing Renandito into the corner, and as they made the way past our cameraman, it is going to see Ian Hall there opened up the corner out of fairness to his rival, but at the same time to give himself the best possible run. But in doing so, he gave Renandito the ability, I think, to really run away with the corner, but he came for the cutback here into turn number 9, but Renandito said, no, I'm going to close that door before you can get your nose in on it. And to be fair, Ian Hall being very respectful, but I think they're losing the trick slightly as we now return to those live pictures. And meanwhile, it is the case of Stephen Bain here in P24. He's had a slight off on that lap. It was the case he's running very close to the back of Jonathan Atkinson, but Atkinson is now dropping him rather rapidly as they make the way into turn number 1 on lap number 14. But as they head on through here and down towards turn at number 3 in rapid order once more, it is the case of Stephen Bain, the 911 driver at this point, driving the BMW M4, but his door number is 911. For those of you getting confused, that's not a Porsche 911. In this case, that's his chosen number on the side of the car. You can see how it is the case right now. He has got Traction Dave behind him, and Dave having had a very difficult start, indeed starting from the pit lane. In fact, that is a good point. He started from the pit lane and made his way all the way up to P25 already, and the Formula Racing League driver here looks at the cutback coming through turn number 7, and now he's going to go on the charge, and I think the 609 driver at this point feels as though he's got enough grunt on the car and indeed enough straight line speed to make the move. It's going to be very incremental here, but as they make the way further down, they've got the toe of Atkinson in front, and they're both, you can see they're both trying to scramble to get into the toe of Atkinson, and it is Traction Dave in the end who's just about there, or is he? No, he started to lose out here as they headed to 6th gear, and as they headed to the right-hander turn number 8, it's going to be Bain who holds off Dave for the time being. Behind, meanwhile, we've still got Leighton Austin trying to get on this fight as they head down towards turn number 9, and as they do, a bit further back, Matt Leyland has dragged his way past Philbinger for P29 as they make the way through. We can see there is the case. Well, that is, I believe that's Endres, the Canadian driver there, who took a bit of a rallycross line. If there was grass, and in fact he's violated track limits, and he's picked up some marbles on the wheels, and it is the case of the tyres, we should say, and that car is not looking very stable as he rolls his way through turn number 10, and as he does, he's really struggling to get that car back into a rhythm as he rolls his way through turn number 11 here. But it is the case of Andres under pressure from what is Leyland and Philbinger for P27 as he rolls his way up into turn number 12. He's done enough for the time being to stay ahead, but I wonder how long it will be before we start to see a potential move from the IRP Racing Club driver of Leyland behind as they head onto another lap very shortly. And of course now the emphasis will start to turn towards pit stops. Our race leaders, of course, already approximately half the way around, so they will have to do at least 2 more laps, including this one, before they're eligible to start pitting. But I think some drives towards the back of the field, particularly say the likes of Trujillo, Matthews and Van Ries, down P35 through to P37, will be thinking about whether they can make a pit stop come the end of this next lap as they make the way on through. But as we look from the rear of our pack towards the front of our pack, indeed our leader right now, Szymanski at this point running away with proceedings, the fastest man on circuit as he rolls his way there through turn number 10 and heads into 11 very shortly. And I think at this point what Szymanski's doing, he's just going all all in on the driving here. They've probably given the car a light amount of fuel. They will need to take on fuel to get to the end of the race or do a huge amount of fuel saving. And I think Szymanski, having started on pole, they focused on filling the car up to go at about 40 to 50% of the race time distance. So that way he made pit early, but he's definitely shown a lot of pace in the car right now, gradually opening up that gap to Harry Phillips. But to be fair, Harry Phillips hadn't had that blinder of a start, having to really force his way up into that P2, but getting it done. You can imagine now he's also trying to stay with Szymanski, and meanwhile, Sir Foch behind in P3, with the Salt Community Racing driver here just staying right within eyeshot of Harry Phillips. And I think he's looking to try and grab a P2 off him a little bit later. And as they make the way around, we look to Kieran Sharp here, who continues to hustle Tim Troquet for P5. The DC Sim Racing driver must be thinking, what do I have to do to shake this guy? As we ride on board here with Tim Troquet, well, I don't think there's any way you could get rid of Kieran Sharp. I think once he's got his sights on you, the only way you're going to get rid of him is if he makes a mistake or he decides to pull into the pits to serve a pit stop. And as they make the way through turns 3 and 4 here, you can see Troquet definitely feeling very unsettled there into turn number 5. The rollout to 4 is seeing the car go very deep on corner exit, and that's cost him his line. He's having to use that as a defense line as a result, but in return, notice the rotation that Troquet got out of turn number 6. It's the case the car seems to want to understeer, but also really oversteer in those low speed corners, and that's why Troquet's actually opened up about an extra tenth to a tenth and a half here before running onto this back straight. Kieran Sharp will gain now, but Troquet no longer doing weaving here. I think he feels so he's actually safe to stay ahead down this back straight. He doesn't need to do the weave at this time, and that is a sign of confidence as the pit window now opens, and it means our drivers can come into the pits to serve their mandatory stop. Remember, they only have to take on fuel. They do not have to change tyres. That's optional, and we'll start to see what exactly strategy-wise our drivers got in mind. Troquet there almost loses it coming out to turn number 8, rolling off the circuit. The car becoming destabilised, and Kieran Sharp's only going to need one attempt at this if he's going to go for it, but Troquet just about holds on. But I think Kieran Sharp at this point is thinking, okay, here's my chance, and as he rolls his way to the outside here at turn number 10, Troquet's going to try and keep in the middle of the road as much as he can, and Kieran Sharp is made to go around the outside. He can't get the cut back in time. The battle for P7 is 1.5 seconds back. I tell you that Yannick Kurtz is holding off Jonathan Reed and Menno van der Molen for the time being, but they are getting closer to this battle for P5. The pit window's open, of course. Will we see Kieran Sharp jump to the pits immediately in order to try and go for the undercut here? Well, I think if he decided to, it would be very risky, but no, he doesn't. I thought he was going to peel on in them. It's not the case, and instead they make the way on to another lap here, charging on down towards turn number 1. But Kieran Sharp definitely right now on the charge, and meanwhile it is the case that Jonathan Reed still holding off Menno van der Molen for the time being, but the two of them were very close together in the run out to turn 13 as they make their way onto another lap. Jonathan Reed holds on for now as into the pits from what was P13 comes Josh Millington. He is the first driver to come in for his scheduled stop, and well, this will be an attempt at a major undercut on the field. Can he pull this off? However, that is the big question. Meanwhile, Matt Leyland here has made his way up to P27 off camera. We've also got their Ian Hall into the pits, and he's coming for QRT. And as we see here, the RP Racing Club driver coming out of the final corner. Well, he surely will not be coming into the pits. No, he stays on out there and makes his way on to another lap. Now chasing after what is Steve Endres here, and the half-fast gaming driver in P24 right now in the number 5 car, having to hold at bay Matt Leyland, who's really grinding into this race. As it's a quick stop for Ian Hall. We've also got into the pits to serve their stop is Ickett Headwind. Also, we have got Stephen Bain, and we've also got Michael Races. So we've got a number of drivers coming on in fact, and this could really open up the race now in terms of those strategies, because all those drivers have got to go for a clear-cut undercut, and meanwhile, the drivers up in front, will they react? Will they respond? Or will they stay on their current plan A, whatever that is? And you can imagine at this point, now the minds will be ticking. Indeed, they'll be looking at those fuel gauges, and they'll be thinking, okay, how much fuel have I got before I have to pit versus when do I actually want to pit? But Steve Endres right now won't be able to do any of that. He'll have to focus on the fact that he has an RP Racing Club machine behind him, and the half-fast gamer driver is being pursued by Matt Leyland here down the back straight. Leyland in the tow here, looking fast, and you can see already Endres having to pull to the right here to go defensive, but Leyland's still got half the straight to go. Now it's a drag race here as they make the way all the way up towards turn number 8, and as they do, they get ready to go into the long right-hander, and as they head into the corner, Leyland is ahead. He gets the move done, and Endres tucks in behind for P24. Matt Leyland has moved up into as they make the way down into turn number 9. We see a potential comeback there for Endres, but it's not enough as they roll the way through the long right-hander. But as they head on through, it is the case. Do we have any more pit stops on the cards right now? Well, no, we do not at this time. It seems as though pit stop season has calmed down for a brief moment. But meanwhile, I can see one driver who has not calmed down. It is Chase Goodall here for RP Racing Club, the American driver, going on the offensive versus Leighton Austin as they make the way out the final corner. But Leighton Austin peels into the pits, as does there. I believe that is Jonathan Atkinson coming in as well for the Sim Racing Collective. So they've decided to go early here. What can Chase Goodall do for RP Racing Club? Can he go long potentially and subvert the strategies of the undercutters? That's one thing, of course, you can do. It used to be, it's now known as the overcut, or we just used to refer to it as going long in the olden days of racing. But it is the case that Chase Goodall here may have an advantage if he can just run with clear air and keep that pace together. But as he makes his way down towards turn number 3 at this point, it is the case we look from him to what is that battle for P5 once again. And Tim Troket here still out of the circuit, still ahead of his rival. Bit further back, however, we've got Jonathan Reed here being attacked by Van der Molen. Van der Molen's going to go around the outside into turn 8. Has he brought it back onto the circuit? Just about. Jonathan Reed, oh, goodness me. And Jonathan Reed there squeezed the inside, and I don't think the SOP Motorsport driver will be pleased with that. I think he will feel as though he had the right to be there on the inside to turn number 9. As we hear it's a drive-through penalty for track limits for Yannick Kurtz. It is the case. He's reached his 3 strikes, and therefore Yannick Kurtz will now have a drive-through and also his pit stop to do. So Yannick Kurtz effectively is now out of the hunt for that potential top 5, or at least we'd imagine so, unless there is massive drama later on in this race. Remember, there are no safety cars in Assetto Corsa Competizione. It is the case that our yellow flags our drivers have to be wary of, and we will not be seeing safety cars here today. But it is the case that Jonathan Reed right now definitely will feel incensed by that defence there by Menno van der Molen. Van der Molen would argue it's harder at fair racing, but I think Jonathan Reed would have a different opinion about that one as they make their way down towards turn number 1. And as they do, they stay as they were for the time being, rolling on through the left-hander. But Van der Molen definitely making the move. He's made it stick for P8, but how much controversy is he called within the stewards room? That's the big question as they make the way down towards turn number 3. But meanwhile, Andrew Pike comes into the pits here, the Sim Racing Collective driver from P17, oh sorry, from P18 I should say. He makes his way on in. And as he does here, in this case, we're seeing quite a few pit stops come on in now. And, well, a little bit of trivia for you if you didn't know this. It is the case, the pit entry that you're seeing here on the simulator is not the pit entry that's actually used in real-day racing nowadays. It is the case the pit entry line was actually moved in 2019 due to safety reasons. It's actually now on the entry to turn number 12 rather than on the exit of turn 13 because of the fact that drivers had to slam on the brakes on the start-finish straight, and it did lead to a couple of incidents in real-world motorsports. That's why it's been moved. But, of course, we're running with the 2018 pit lane entry here, which your drivers are aware of, and indeed they're aware of the safety concerns there. But enough about safety and whatnot. Of course, safety key to motorsport, and we do have our virtual marshals in effect. It is the case here we're looking at Renandito, and as he makes his way through turn number 7, it is the case the number 19 driver here chasing after Ryan Cooper, but Cooper, to be fair, is a sizable way up the road by comparison, and Cooper also being aided by the slipstream of what is there in front of him, Alex Nunes, who he creeps closer to, and in fact he's creeping towards Nunes at a very alarming rate here. I wonder if there's a move on the cards. As they make the way into the corner, Cooper's going to think about this, and as they head into turn number 8, did he go up the inside? Well, Nunes gave him the space, and I think Cooper's had to back out. Indeed, he has had to back out there on that inside line, but he did think about it, did Ryan Cooper. He's trying to get in the head of his rival as they make the way through the long right-hander, and meanwhile, I can tell you that Kieran Sharp has found his way into P5. How did that happen? Let's take a look back. In fact, I believe it was already done on the run onto the back straight here, but we then saw a return move from Tim Troket here as they made the way down. You can see Yannick Kurtz as well trying to get into the fight. So we have missed the actual overtake itself, but I'm hearing in my ear it was made on the exit of 7. Kieran Sharp had the much better run through turns 6 and 7. Oh, goodness me, and we see a Sim Racing Collective car there returning to the circuit and pulling off. I'm not sure who that is, but they've definitely had a major moment. I think that may be, well, it's got to be somebody a bit further down the order. I think that might be Andrew Pike, in fact, but definitely they had to take evasive action at the very last minute. But as we continue to watch here, it was the case that Tim Troket tried to come back through turns 8 and 9 but couldn't do so, and now we return to live pictures here, and it is the case that Kieran Sharp has finally found his way into P5. But how much time has it cost him is the question. He's 6.5 seconds off Christoph Samin, who's running in P4, but you can imagine Tim Troket here will not give up, and Kieran Sharp right now under pressure as we're on these live pictures heading into turn number 8, and it looks as though Troket's going to try and go around the outside. And whether you needed proof which car has got the better straight line speed or less downforce on it, now you know, because Tim Troket finds himself ahead as they make their way through turn number 8, and Kieran Sharp at this point He'll know now that in order to be able to beat Troquet, he's got to do it on strategy, or to have Troquet make an absolute blunder of a corner and pull at least a second's gap, because it's not happening otherwise. That the DC Sim Racing at BMW M4 is running much less downforce on that straight, and it is being shown time and time again as they make the way through at turn number 10 and up towards 12. But as they do roll them through the long right-hander of 11, it is the case, this battle, one of the great battles out of the circuit. Meanwhile, Yannick Kurtz here makes his way past what is, I believe, on his way. Oh, goodness me, he won't be going anywhere else sooner. It's the case, we've seen the QRT machine there getting it very wrong, and well, they have dropped a long way down. I believe that is, well, I'm not especially sure who that is who's gone wrong there, but the QRT machine gets it horrifically wrong, coming out of turn number 8 and sending Yannick Kurtz spinning. And well, we'll have to find out who that was in due course. I think it was, well, it looks like it's the car here of the 911 car of Stephen Bain, getting out all sorts, and Yannick Kurtz, after a drive-through penalty, has now had his fortunes go from good to bad to disastrous. But as we look to Stephen Bain here, I think he would argue there's nothing he could do, is trying to stop the car as much as possible. Well, that is very unfortunate, but going from the unfortunate to the fortunate, we do look to Jeff Trocchio here, and it is the case, the half-fast gaming driver chasing after Traction Dave, and ahead we see Michael Van Ries here, battling side by side with Drew Matthews for P24 as they roll their way through turn number 10, and the Dutchman holding around the outside to inside, running to 11 to hold on to that P24 position. But Michael Van Ries has really had to struggle to get up into this position versus his rivals, but that struggle is now reaping rewards for him in the fact that he's gained a couple more places, and he's definitely shown the pace he's got in the Formula Racing League BMW M4 as he makes his way out of the final corner, down the start for this straight. We've still got 20 minutes on that pit window, and we're still waiting for some major pit stops. Yannick Kurtz is into the pits for his pit stop, and definitely some repair work as well now to be added to that. We've also got Richard Pixley into the pit lane, and Michael Van Ries at this point tucked up behind Jonathan Reed. And to be fair, Jonathan Reed has just served his pit stop, so he's come out at P21. And well, for Jonathan Reed, I think he'll be absolutely thankful he's come out to clear air and just ahead of this battle for P22, not in amongst it. Because if he'd come out in amongst that battle, his race, I think, would be severely compromised. But right now, he can focus on breaking away. Meanwhile, Van Ries, followed by Matthews, Dave and Trocchio, they're all battling for position here, and they've all yet to serve their stops. They're in a very different race by comparison as they make their way for it. Drew Matthews here, the American driver, under major pressure as they make their way out of turn number 7, and you can see here that Dave takes a look to the outside then as they drag race their way along. But as they do, it's a very slow gain here. Both of them, of course, running different amounts of downforce. It changes the complexions. We hear there's a drive-through penalty for Richard Pixley, who's just served his pit stop, and now he's got a drive-through for track limits. But Drew Matthews here defending to the inside as much as he can. Traction Dave just has not got any more steam, and as they make their way into turn number 8, Drew Matthews will hold on to the position for now, but he's had to bring the car over the apex curve. This could open up an opportunity for Dave into turn 9. No, Dave looks for the outside to inside cutback here if he's going to go for it, but he goes a bit too deep, and Drew Matthews covers him off here. The American driver holding on to P23 as they roll their way out of the corner and up into turn number 10. But as they do a great rivalry here just outside the top 20. Meanwhile, Kieran Sharp into the pit lane. And as he sits there in the pit lane, the Sim Racing Collective driver coming down off of the jacks, it is the case. He's going to drop all the way down, we believe, to about P18 or so. In fact, I think it's about P19. And the big question will be, here comes Jonathan Reed. Now, will Jonathan Reed from SOP Motorsport get out ahead of Kieran Sharp? It's a big question that has to be answered. And here comes Kieran Sharp. We look to the helicam. Watch out for Jonathan Reed on the right-hand side of your picture. Here he comes. And in fact, it is Jonathan Reed who gets them through there at the last possible minute. Well, now, how on earth has that happened? Given the fact that Kieran Sharp was in that battle for so long, I think that's what's done it for Kieran Sharp, really. He was in that battle, and it was a long pit stop. Jonathan Reed's pit stop was a 32-second stationary stop. Meanwhile, Kieran Sharp, well, in fact, no, end-to-end, my apologies. It was the case that Kieran Sharp having a 35-second stop from end-to-end when he came in the pit lane to exiting it. Meanwhile, Jonathan Reed was 3 seconds faster, and that 3 seconds is why now Kieran Sharp finds himself down in P21, not P20, and Jonathan Reed is the leader effectively in those who have stopped already, and this could really change the complexion of the top 10 later on in this race. But as they make the way down the back straight, now Kieran Sharp will know he's got it all to do, and he has not got the straight line speed to pass everybody. We saw that with Tim Troquet, but as they make the way down, we look from them battling for position to a bit further up the field, and in particular we do look to, in fact, we're not going to cut away just yet because Kieran Sharp is starting to build that momentum here. Could he look for the move on Reed into turn number 8? I think if he's going to, it's going to have to be a dive at the last minute here. No, he won't be diving for it. He's going to wait. You have to look for turn 9 or turn 10 instead. heading on into the corner. No way through this time. He has to wait his turn. As we head, there's a drive-through penalty for Drew Matthews for track limits. Track limits are definitely haunting a lot of drivers here today, because this circuit being one of the major circuits that is policed to track limits, given how easy it is to run wide here and arguably gain significant race time. But we see Callum Conde, meanwhile, in P17, chasing after his teammate Matt Leyland, and in fact coming into the pits there after almost losing the car off of the final corner. What the fact the curves raised off the asphalt surface, it is the case that Conde will almost lose in the end, but not to be. But he comes in from P17. He'll drop down the order to a degree, and we'll see where he emerges a little bit later on. But speaking of drivers who are emerging in terms of pace, we now look from P20 to the P10 driver, Tom Davidson here for Rapid Drivers Club. And as he makes his way down this back straight, definitely flying right now in the long charge. And as he heads all the way down, it is the case. We can see Davidson absolutely flying at this time as he heads up towards turn number 8. But as he does in the 842 car, it is the case that he's falling back a little bit compared to Nerva. But both of these drivers have really evolved into this race after difficult qualifying sessions. More so what was Nerva compared to Davidson. And you can see Wojciech Nervev here really pushing on here, the Czech driver, as the Silk Community race tried to almost lose it through turn number 9 as he just went slightly deep under braking. But look at this, we've got our 3 leaders all into the pits at the same time. Szymanski's coming from the lead, we've got Harry Phillips in, we've also got Foch in, and well, that releases Christoph Samin to take the lead of this race. Of course, he's yet to make his pit stop, and as he flies on around here, it is the case the DC Sim Racing driver at this point in time will be thinking about trying to deliver as much as possible, given the clear track that's afforded to him, and the 996 driver cannot afford to burn this opportunity as he makes his way on around. But as he does, we'll have to wait to see how it plays out for our top 3 who came into the pits of Szymanski, Phillips and Foch in terms of where they all come out together. Menno van der Molen in P2 now, Liam Page in P3. We are just waiting for that update, and Szymanski has already left his pit box, and here he comes out to the pit lane. So he's had a very quick stop. So I think the Salt Community Racing driver here on an absolute tear, and in fact he's going to come back out in P10, and then it is going to be, I think, Sir Foch just coming out behind Harry Phillips here as they leave the pit lane and get back up to speed. But it's definitely the case that Foch has closed up to Harry Phillips through the pit stop. He's closed up by a margin of 3 seconds. In fact, the length of the pit stops there do not lie. Harry Phillips' pit stop was 4.5 seconds longer, and that is how Foch has gained the time as they make the way down onto turn number 3 once again. But definitely we're looking at here Salt Community Racing. Could they be going for a 1-2 lockout? There'll definitely be 2 drivers on the podium at this rate, but it looks like Szymanski has got the upper hand on the entire field, and then it's down to who will finish in P2. As meanwhile, where is some other drivers here, particularly where is Tim Troquet? He's running in P15 right now, and he is caught up behind Aurelian Kroos and also Endres, who are a bit further up the road. But I think the bigger concern for Troquet is the fact that as we ride on board with him here, yes, you're right, if you think that's Jonathan Reed and that's Kieran Sharp, that's the 2 drivers behind, and we have got a 3-way fight here for what we believe is effectively P4 and circuit, but it could all turn around. It could be for P5 at this point, if not a bit further back. And Tim Troquet under pressure here. There's the SOP Motorsport driver, who you can see get very close to the number 16 car of what we'll see the number 16 position car of Jonathan Reed as they make the way down towards turn number 8 here. Reed's going to be on the inside. Kieran Sharp literally tucking it as close as possible for Jonathan Reed. He wants to try and come through with Reed into turn number 8, but he's not got the speed to do it. Reed there just holds the inside. Troquet tries to hold into the apex. They go side by side out of 8 down into 9. Reed covers off the inside. Troquet loses the position. He loses the rear of the car. He catches it, but Kieran Sharp needs to go on through at this point. If he doesn't, he'll be stuck there for the rest of the race. And as they make the way out to turn number 9, Troquet knows as he's trying to come back, but in the process, after sliding wide, he's cut the tyres on the car, and Troquet loses 2 positions there through the rear, just sliding out through turn number 9. But my goodness, that was very close, and brilliant catch of the car there by Tim Troquet, but he has lost the 2 places. That shows you how much it means to these 3. They're running so close together, right on the limit. We're hearing that Novov is into the pit lane for a P7, so where will he come out? The Salt Community Racing driver as well. I don't think he's going to come out in amongst these guys as they're making the way past him already, but we know that Menno van der Molen's already had his pit stop. We've still got everything to figure out in terms well of our drivers fit into the order, but it is the case of Kieran Sharp here. Well, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that is Menno van der Molen who's literally come out alongside Kieran Sharp, and Kieran Sharp needed to make that pass on Troquet, and he's done it. That is a critical pass for Kieran Sharp, and indeed for Jonathan Reed as well. They have cleared the DC Sim Racing drivers, and how Troquet right now will be kicking himself, because if he'd been able to hold on to that position, he would have been able to bring his teammate into the fight, and it has not worked out. Menno van der Volden right now, I think, will be trying to say to Troquet, right, we have got to try and find a way past both of them, and we've got to do this together, because right now the DC Sim Racing drivers are running P15 to P16. We believe that equates to about P8, P9 once all the pit stops are done, and that's not where they want to find themselves as they make their way down this back straight. And indeed, we head to 9 o'clock in the evening. You can see the sun is starting to go away, and as the sun starts to go away, you can imagine that track temperature and the ambient temperature may start to drop quite significantly, and that could throw a new conundrum into the works. But we see here Troquet going around the outside of his teammate here. They're going to swap the places around as they head into turn number 8. But as they do, we look up towards our leader right now, and it is Liam Page here, who's still got 11 minutes on the clock before he has to have served his pit stop. Otherwise, he will receive a post-race penalty. I believe it will be a post-race disqualification. But meanwhile, Ryan Cooper going very slowly here. He's been passed, I believe, by a couple of drivers, unless I'm very much mistaken. And boy, I wonder if there was a slight off-track, or he's simply locked up into a corner. But Ryan Cooper has lost out considerably as he's dropped the piece, and now he comes into the pits to serve his pit stop. Alex Nunes into the pits as well. But what exactly is happening there, we're not 100% sure. But meanwhile, we do have Hubert Szymanski here, who finds himself in P4, and indeed he is our leading driver who served his pit stop. And right now, I think this race is Szymanski's to lose. He is absolutely flying, it has to be said. And there's still 40 minutes on the clock. Anything can happen over 40 minutes, but he's feeling very comfortable. And as we see a very comfortable driver making his way through turn number 6, we talk about a driver who's perhaps not feeling too comfortable right now, and that is Christophe Samin. Although, to be fair, I say that, actually, I take it back, he must be feeling quite comfortable right now, given the fact that he's come back out in effective P4. That's where he entered the pit lane from, and as he makes his way on around turn number 6 right now, we'll see him there at the top of your picture, heading out of the corner and in towards turn number 7. He's trying to hunt down Sir Foch, who is the best part of 4.5 seconds up the road as they make their way down this back straight. But indeed, these drivers now knowing they need to push on for the remainder of the race. The job's only half done, and now it is the charge to the finish. But as they charge onwards towards the finish at this point, we've still got pit stops happening further down the order, and we can see Aurelien Kroos here currently in the pit lane, the Frenchman for World Thinks Racing, being serviced, and that is, I believe, the Sim Racing collective car of Jonathan Atkinson in front. And Atkinson, having had a very difficult race today, he's been in the pits for some time. I believe he's parked up, and they may be retiring the car, or at least they're doing a lot of repair work and investigation to the car. Ryan Cooper, meanwhile, well, the debut's on from World Thinks Racing here, running in P18. He has got Alex Nunes, who's just taken his pit stop, and Andrew Pike behind him. And as we've right on board here with Andrew Pike in this three-way battle for P18, they're fighting for the last of the points inside the top 20. And as they make their way down this back straight, Andrew Pike right now not in the attacking position. I think he has to wait and watch. He's in the popcorn seat position where he'll be waiting to see how he can capitalise here. As we see Nunes taking to the outside, dragging his way past what is there Cooper, and I don't think Cooper's got the straight line speed. I think he's got the downforce of the car, and Andrew Pike with the double toe is now going to say, now it's my turn. It's a drag race all the way towards turn number 8, and as he heads into the quarter apex here, he's going to look up the inside. There's a bit of a tap from the rear end there of what was, I believe, Cooper. In fact, I don't think there was contact. It looked like in the rearview mirror, but that's how close they get here through Paul Ricard. And as they make their way through turn number 9 right now, you can see Andrew Pike coming on through with Nunes for P18 and 19, the two drivers. And meanwhile, I think Cooper's started to fall back. They're just struggling a little bit as they head into the latter stages of this race. We've still got 8 minutes in that pit window. We've still got drivers taking their pit stops who will need to take their pit stops, including Brett Nandito, who's down to the pits as I look out my commentary box window. But as our drivers roll the way through turn number 12, it is the case that Andrew Pike really having to think about going on the charge versus Alex Nunes. As we see Ryan Cooper through these more technical sections, that is where his car's set up for. It's not set up for the straights, it's made for the corners, but of course he's not quite able to capitalise at this time, and Pike and Nunes are gradually running off into the distance. But as they make their way up to speed, we can see the Renandito coming out of the pit lane, and as he does, stand as far over to the right hand side from his perspective to avoid the drivers coming on through, and he drops behind Iker Hedlund and Yannick Kurtz, who are now up into what is effectively P21 and P20 respectively. Renandito out in P22, and as they make their way down towards turn number 3, it is the case that the majority of our pit stops are now said and done. As we've got a drive-through penalty for Callum Conde, it is the case that he has been found guilty of breaching those track limits multiple times, one time too many. And well, we've still got that big question, of course. And also, here's a question for you. Liam Page, he's yet to pit. Where's he going to come out when he pits? Well, We'll keep in mind, of course, Liam Page running very comfortably inside the top 10 before all the pit stops occurred. You can imagine the SOP Motorsport driver at this point, he'll be thinking about where will he come on out, and I don't think it's going to be the case that he's going to be coming out right up in that top 5, but I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out around the region of the Reed Sharp Troquette battle, which has intensified. And if you're wondering how that battle's going, here it is with Jonathan Reed in P6. And he's not able to pull away from Kieran Sharp nor Troquette as the three of them make their way down the start-finish straight here and on to another lap. They go on to what is effective for them, lap number 28 as they cross that timeline. And, well, Troquette waited for that opportunity, much like Sharp, to try and find an advantage on Jonathan Reed. But the thing about Jonathan Reed is he does not show signs of weakness. You've really got to put a lot of pressure on him in order to get him to make a mistake. And the 105 driver right now definitely delivering a solid race and aiming for what is that P6, potentially P5, depending on where Liam Page comes out into this mix. But as they roll the way down through turns 4 and into 5, it is the case that as they come out of the corner here, Kieran Sharp finds himself right in the middle of the trio and looking for a good run out of turn number 6 this time. But can he find it as we look to the helicam? I don't think it's going to be the case that Sharp's going to be close enough initially, but now this is where we'll start to see in the tow. Has Sharp got enough here to inch close enough? I don't think so. I think Kieran Sharp, in fact, he's gaining little by little, but we are already halfway down the straight. He's going to have a chance. In fact, he is now starting to pick up that toe, and as they head in towards turn number 8, it is the case he's going to look on the inside here, heading into the right hand of Reed's not going to defend it. I think he worries about the fact he'll lose 2 places, the price of 1, if he defends it too hard. And as they head through turn number 8, Kieran Sharp moving up into P6, that coveted P6 that he's wanted for so long to clear this battle. And as they make the way through turn number 9, and we look down to the closer circuit cameras, it is the case of Kieran Sharp now up into that position. In fact, Jonathan Reed, they're really struggling out to 9, and Troquette takes a peek inside into 10. Has Reed got a problem with the car? It just doesn't look as though he's got the speed right now, unless it's the case he's simply used the wrong gear, alternatively got on the throttle a bit too late, or it's a minor mistake that we just haven't been able to see on camera. Jonathan Reed there with a very slow moment coming out to 9 up into 10, and Troquette's all over this. And speaking of all over it, there's Menno van der Molen who's now got into this battle for what is effectively P6. Can he also really push his teammate along and gain? That will be the big question as they make the way on to another lap. And a bit further down the order, I can tell that Yannick Kurtz has dropped to P20. It is the case of Brian Cooper finding his way back past Yannick Kurtz, who made it off only moments ago. And as they make the way out of what is now, I believe that is turn number 9 up into 10, and we are affirmed by that based on the angle of the corner. It is the case now. We can see how Ikit Hudwin has closed up, and this is your driver who, remember, qualified well up inside the top 10. And the German driver's had a difficult day after an early incident as he tries to head on in. And, well, it is the case as they roll the way through turn number 12 into 13 and head on into that top 20 is his target. We do have a question there from Low Power in the Twitch chat asking what happens when the pit window opens, are drivers forced to pit? That is correct. They have to take their mandatory pit stop within the 30-minute window. If they do not serve the pit stop by the closure of that 30-minute window, and we've only got 4 minutes of it left, then they will be disqualified or subject to a huge post-race time penalty, which will essentially destroy their race result. So it does force our drivers to pit, and there's that one mandatory stop where they have to take on fuel. Tyre changes are optional, but speaking of optional right now, one thing that's not optional for Tim Troquette is finding his way past Jonathan Reed, and he's done so down the back straight for P7 as they head down towards turn number 9. And as they roll the way on through at this point, Tim Troquette now trying to go after Kieran Sharp once again, and can Menno van der Molen repeat what his teammate has just done on Jonathan Reed and gain that P8 off of him? You'd like to think he could, but as they make the way on through, saying it is one thing, doing it is a completely different matter here, as we've seen how close the race has been inside this top 10. But meanwhile, in P10 completes that top 10, we have Matt Camelio here, the SOP Motorsport driver, who is being hunted very gradually by Josh Millington. You thought it would be the Sim Racing Collective car directly behind him. No, it wasn't to be there. In fact, that Sim Racing Collective car behind him, I'm not 100% sure who is behind the wheel of that car at this time. It is the case, my memory's not too great right now, but it's the case of Josh Millington a bit further back and having to go on the offensive. But meanwhile, speaking of a driver trying to go on the offensive, Mark Bunyan here in P16, the SOP Motorsport driver, chased after our P15 driver of Leighton Austin, and the Quantum Racing Team driver here having a good race. And remember, Leighton Austin has come from the I think it was P30 he qualified, where he qualified definitely right towards the back of the grid. He's come all the way out to P15, and right now, if he's able to pull this off or at least finish inside the top 20, they're going to treat it like a win, I think, down at Quantum Racing Team, because this is a huge achievement. And Ian Hall as well, just in front in P14. It is the case that Quantum Racing Team have come alive in the race here at Paul Ricard, as we see Traction Dave there has just been given a drive-through penalty for track limits. It is the case that another driver has fallen to the automated track limit stewarding system, and it is Traction Dave who's down at P25, and it will not be a happy day for him now, as he'll have to come into the pits, and that will massively hurt his finishing position. But as time presses on here at Paul Ricard, the pit window still open, but for 2 minutes we see the last of our drivers yet to pit coming in. It is Liam Page. He pits in the lead of this race, and that will release what is here the Salt Community Racing Team driver of Szymanski, Hubert Szymanski, back into the lead of this race. There's no doubt about that. Now, how much will it release him into lead, where it's going to be a 10-second window as we're to understand it. Harry Phillips is 10 seconds back, and Phillips will move up into that P2 position. But where is Liam Page going to come out? We believe he's going to come out somewhere in the region of the battle from P6 to P9. Well, it is the case that Page has served his pit stop. This is Kieran Sharp in P6. Let's look to Liam Page as he makes his way out of the pit lane and heads on down. We look to the helicam and making his way on past. That is Christoph Semming coming on past, and as Liam Page gets towards the exit line here, where he'll be able to turn off the pit limiter and start to head up to speed, there's no sign of Kieran Sharp here. I think Liam Page has pulled off a brilliant piece of strategy here to come out in P5. Indeed he has, because that is Kieran Sharp making his way through turn number 1. Liam Page has jumped all the way from the back end of the top 10 up to P5, and it's all through going incredibly long. Meanwhile, Kieran Sharp, Troket, Miller van der Molen and Jonathan Reed have been battling for this P6, and it has cost them the opportunity to battle immediately for P5. They've now got to play the chasing game. It's going to be cat and mouse all the way to the end, and can Liam Page stay ahead to hold on to a top 5 finish for SOP Motorsport? That'll be the question. It is a top 5 dominated by the Salt Community Racing Team, albeit with Wild Things Racing and also DC Sim Racing in the mix. But can Liam Page for SOP Motorsport back into that top 5 after their brilliant success on strategy back at what was, of course, Kyle Army, where they chose not to change the tyres, and that's what gave them track position in the end. And has Liam Page decided not to change tyres and instead go on the same set of tyres all the way to the end? And the tyres can do 90 minutes as the pit window closes. All our drivers did serve their mandated pit stops in that window, so no post-race penalties to be applied there. But it is a case, of course, they haven't changed the tyres, then it will be one of those situations where those tyres are going to feel absolutely shod come the very end of the race. And as we try to look for our data, I can confirm that Liam Page did not change tyres. His pit stop was a 15.2 second stationary time, so he only put the fuel in to go into the end. So that will mean he will likely now drop away in terms of pace compared to his rivals. But can he defend well? And you can see already Kieran Sharp is on a charge here, and I have to correct the statement I made earlier on the broadcast where I said we do not normally see drivers change tyres. We normally, in fact, do see drivers change tyres in the pit lane, and it's those who do not who try to throw a conundrum into the works. And SOP Motorsport seem to be the team that love throwing in that gamble of not changing tyres as they make the way on around out of the final corner and down towards another lap. But Liam Page right now, you could see it here. That gap has closed up so much since the start of the previous lap, and as they make the way onto another lap right now, I think it's not going to be too long before Page has to think about going very defensive, and he's going to have to defend that P5 for 30 minutes almost. Well, really is going to be 30 minutes, because you say 29 minutes plus the final lap of the race, and well, has he got it in him to do it? I'd like to think he has, and I think the SOP Motorsport team will definitely think he has, but of course, saying it's one thing, he's now got to prove it, as Kieran Sharp is already all over the back of him here in the battle for P5. The headlights are coming on, we are heading deeper and deeper into the evening, the sun has set almost, and as they make the way out of turn 6 into 7, it is the case, we'll now see the first test. Has Liam Page got the straight line speed here to keep the slipstream Kieran Sharp at bay? Troket's behind as well, plus Vidar van der Molen, and then we've got Jonathan Reed in P9. They're all together here, albeit Jonathan Reed has actually fallen backwards over the course of the last couple of laps, but you can see already Kieran Sharp gets it very close. He gets the overspeed here, and I think it's going to be the first sign of a pass as they make the way up towards turn number 8. And as they head on in, Kieran Sharp ahead, he pulls back to the racing line. Liam Page looking stationary there, but to be fair, that's the way the slipstream works. And as they make the way now, oh goodness me, Kieran Sharp almost missing the track limits there, and in fact he had to swerve back on, and Liam Page not too happy about that, and going to the inside into turn number 9. Page is not going to give this up, but I think with fresh tyres, Kieran Sharp is going to stay ahead. And look at this tip choke out the inside. It's very close, there's a little bit of tap, then Liam Page goes wide from the contact from tip choke. It forces him off the circuit. And as he returns here, he returns using the escape road route effectively. He backs off as he rejoins in the apex of turn number 11. But that's very frustrating for Leo Page. He will not be happy about that contact. He will feel as though he's lost 2 places, which he had the right to defend. And as he makes his way back up to speed, has he got anything in the tank to be able to go back on the offensive versus Troquet and Van der Molen? I don't think he has. I think he needed that track position, but it was the tiniest of taps, and it's upset the rhythm for the SOP Motorsport driver as they make their way into turn 1. But you can see the aggression under braking there. He is not happy, and now he is driving seeing red. Of course, not seeing enough red to make contact. We don't want to see that for SOP Motorsport, like all of our communities here, a community of fair racing drivers. But you can feel his frustration right now. It is the fact that he wanted that right to defend, and it's been taken from him as he makes his way into turn number 5. But as he does now, all heads will be down once again. You never know what could happen, of course, because now Kieran Sharp will have the ugly prospect of holding on to P5 to the end of the race here. I don't think he's going to be closing down the gap to Christoph Samin anytime soon, who in P4 is 11 seconds up the road. But say it's not so, it can happen, especially if Samin was to have a moment. But this battle for P5, I think, is only up in a notch every time we look at it. Meanwhile, in P13, Tom Davidson here chasing after Neuwerth for P12, and of course the Salt Community Racing driver ahead of the Rapid Drivers Club driver at this time. Both of them having good races in terms of coming from quite far back in the field. Neuwerth in particular, who started in P19, made his way out towards P12, but as they made the way out of that final corner, it is the case that I do apologise to Nick Timmermans in the YouTube chat saying what a race and broadcast over an hour ago almost. Indeed, enjoying it is Nick Timmermans, and we're enjoying it here, and I'm glad to hear that, Nick, that you enjoyed the broadcast as they make their way down the back straight here. The time is wearing on, and as they come charging on down here, Davison just does not have the speed down what is this back straight, and you could see there how Neuwerth is just able to stay comfortably ahead. And again, that shows you the difference in the setups of the car there, and that's the brilliant thing with this circuit and the fact that everybody is in the same car. You'd think it would create bland racing, but no, at a circuit which is all about balance of performance, as they roll their way through the right hand, and Neuwerth goes very deep into turn number 9, and in fact beyond the track limits he's now going to have to defend with marbles on the tyres. That's what Paul Ricard generates. When everybody's in the same car, it is about who has set up the car comfortably for themselves and who can unlock that pace. As they make the way into turn number 12, it is the case at this point that Neuwerth will need to now go defensive for at least a lap to try and reset that gap between the two of them. And as they make the way through the final corner here, could be a little bit of nerves creeping in for the Czech driver. He's done a very good race and he won't want to lose that P12. He is a little bit off the back of Millington, who is 2.2 seconds up the road, but Millington's not too far away as they head down towards turn number 1. But you can see Davison has been spurred on by this. He is looking, he's hungry for a position here. Meanwhile, a bit further back, I can tell you it is the case that looking from them to Ike Headpoint, the P20 driver here for Salt Community Racing on the charge after Pike, as we see there that the half-fast gaming driver of Endres from Canada in P28 has picked up a drive-through penalty for track limits as well. I think we may still see some penalties. Could we see some penalties inside that top 10 for track limits? If so, those would be an absolute spoiler to races, and it could turn the tables on their heads. But as they make the way on through turns 1 and 2 here, Headpoint will only be thinking about one thing, and that is finding his way on through. But a bit further up the road here, we see the battle for P17, P16 between Yannick Kurtz and what is Leighton Austin, and Austin defending hard here for P16. The Quantum Racing team driver doing everything in his power to hold on. Alex Nunes also behind as they roll their way through turn number 7, and as they head down this back straight now. I mean, it's going to be the case that one of those situations whereby for Kurtz, he was so close, he hasn't gained on the toe. He's going to have to do it all on straight line speed in his own momentum as they make the way up towards turn number 8. You can see here Alex Nunes thinking about trying to make it 3 wide. He's trying to creep into this battle, but he's not close enough or fast enough to be able to do so. Instead, he has to wait, but Leighton Austin here defends hard to the inside into turn number 8. He doesn't want to lose the position. They go 2 wide through the corner, a small tap. Alex Nunes makes it 3 wide into turn number 9, and he goes up the inside. Leighton Austin there being reversed Moses by the 2 drivers around him. They go around him, 1 on the inside, 1 on the outside, and Leighton Austin loses 2 places for the price of 1. But it's not over yet, as Yannick Kurtz now tries to cement that P16 as they roll their way into turn number 10 up the inside versus Alex Nunes, and he gains it. The DC Sim Racing driver gets on through, and Leighton Austin now is stuck there behind the pair of them in P18. Nunes up to P17, and Yannick Kurtz finally establishes a foothold on that P16 position. His next target is Ian Hall, who is further up the road in P15 as they make the way down the start-finish straight here. And as they do, Ian Hall at this point must be thinking to himself, my goodness, I have got a lot coming my way if I don't get a move on, because you can see it there in the rear of your picture. It is the case that Yannick Kurtz right now has the pressure still of Nunes behind him. Alex Nunes has got the bit between the teeth, and he is not giving in right now. And that's the thing about Alex Nunes. Once he gets fired up, it is the case there's nothing stopping him. He's like a bull in a china shop. It is the case he will look for positions left, right and centre, and he wants that P16 off of Yannick Kurtz. But as they make the way on through, it is the case a little bit further up the order. Jonathan Reed has just found his way into P8 ahead of Liam Page, and I think Page has had a bit of an off track. Let's take a look back. Well, this was only moments ago in the charge up towards what was turn at number 8 here, and as they made the way charging down this back straight, well, we can see a flash of lights there for Jonathan Reed, and well, Liam Page goes defensive here, but I think Jonathan Reed was trying to either get in his head or say I'm not going to make the move, but Liam Page just tucked on in, and well, did he get it a bit wrong coming out of the corner? Well, not really, no. It's just the case then losing the position, and I think it may have been the case that Liam Page decided just to let it go, given the state of the car and also the instant it was in earlier. But Liam Page at this point down to P9, and well, he won't want to lose too much time because the next driver to catching up, well, to be fair, it's his teammate Camelio, but Camelio right now in P10, he's not too far ahead of Millington, or is he? In fact, where is Josh Millington is the big question. Well, here is Josh Millington. In fact, they've got a long gap to P11, so I think it's the case that Liam Page may be thinking right now about sacrificing positions for the team's gain. But meanwhile, we look from what is P11 here to Kieran Sharp, who just has Minamanda Molan going up his, also that's Tim Troket going up his inside there. And Tim Troket coming on very strong as behind him. Well, that is why the Formula Racing machines, that is a lap down. I do believe that is, unless I'm very much mistaken, trying to see the door number on the Formula Racing machine. We can't quite see it at the moment, but regardless, Kieran Sharp, they lose the place to Troket through turns 3 through to 5, and as he tucks into the slipstream here of Tim Troket, trying to find a way on back, I don't think it's going to be coming back anytime soon. I think he's going to wait very patiently here for that opportunity, and that's Michael Races in the Formula Racing League car down in what is P28, who we saw involved, and as we see another one of the Formula Racing League cars moving aside there, indeed respecting the blue flags, albeit they don't have to pull off the race tonight. It's the case it's the responsibility of the faster drivers to find the one through, but we see there an almost near moment for what was Tim Troket ahead, almost losing the car there, and he caught it very well, but I think the track limit system may just pick up on that, and he may be running on thin ice right now. It may be his last opportunity. The next one, we could see a drive-through penalty. Well, of course, we don't wish it on anybody here, but Troket right now, it's feeling the pressure, and indeed those tyres, and I think all of our drivers at this point really have to try and pull everything out of the tyres they can, but I think the tyres might be biting back a little bit. But to be fair, the track's still in a very good condition, optimal condition in terms of the rubber being laid down and the grip available at 22 degrees ambient temperature, and the same for the track temperature. We've still got clear skies, we've got no cloud in sight, and it means that this track right now is in a prime condition for racing. And as they make the way on through, still 20 minutes to go, including the final lap, it is the case we've still got unresolved battles. And speaking of unresolved battles, we see Alex Nunes there deciding to miss turn 9 almost completely, but he finds it again in the end. Well, he's at P17, and he's got Ian Hall and Yannick Kurtz ahead of him as they roll their way through the left-hander here. But Ian Hall definitely getting feisty versus Yannick Kurtz, and Alex Nunes. They're carrying way too much speed into turn number 9. It is the case these battles all building up to a crescendo, whether it's at the front of the field or further down. They're all starting to really push on, and Ian Hall at this point, between that rock and a hard place, he's got DC Sim Racing in front of him, and then he's got Rapid Drivers Club behind him, and behind it's a very similar situation here for Andrew Pike in P19. In front of him he's got Leighton Austin in P18 for Quantum Racing Team, and behind him he's got Eckert Hedvoin, the German driver from some racing community, who is trying to go on the offensive and gain a couple more places come the finish. And Renandito, you can see there not too much further behind in the light blue Rapid Drivers Club car as they make the way into turn number 1. And as we ride on board here with our P20 driver, what can he do in this situation? Well, I think obviously everybody going all in at this point in the race and trying to deliver the best possible laps and gain those last places as Headway goes very deep on the brakes there. but just about brings it together and gets it. Stop, my goodness, my heart was in my mouth. I thought he was going to be taking the rear of Andrew Pike's car clean off, but then again, that just goes to show you the confidence and ability in each of our drivers here. Many of these drivers, of course, official esports racing drivers that has to be considered competing in major series, and as they make the way on through, and this being no less of a major series here on Assetto Corsa Competizione, it is the case that Igor Hedwig definitely there, judging the margins very fine in terms of getting close to Pike as they make the way down this back straight. You can see Pike once again find himself in that slipstream drag race, and meanwhile Hedwig gives him a tap so to get a move on, and as they make the way in towards turn number 8 here, where it's going to be a bit of damage to the front bumper at Hedwig's car, but in giving him that tap, he's helped Andrew Pike get ahead. Now that was a bit of an assist, and I think Andrew Pike at first may be thinking, what on earth are you doing? And he's going to look back about 3 seconds later and go, actually, thank you, Ike, I really appreciate that. But in return, it's hurt the Salt Community Racing driver quite a bit, because he's now stuck behind Leighton Austin, as we hear that Michael Van Ries has picked up a drive-through penalty for track limits in P25. But we can see here Hedwig looking for the move on the exit of turn 10. He's going to go the long way around in 11. He's been squeezed the outside here, but that'll give him the inside into turn 12. But he's had to back off there. He's just not got the rotation in the car to keep it flat on the throttle for 11 into 12 on that line. And you can see now Renandito getting very feisty here for P20. He's running P21. The Polish driver here trying to get into this fight, with the focus being, of course, ahead, not behind, for Hedwig. And as they make their way down towards turn number 1 at this point, 16.5 minutes still on the clock for them. We do see a driver coming into the pit lane, I believe, unless I'm mistaken. That's Stephen Bain into the pit lane. I'm not sure what's wrong with Bain. It may be the case that he's had something go wrong with the car, but definitely Renandito now having to charge on here and look for that prospect of P20, if not P19. But Leighton Austin, meanwhile, after being passed there by Andrew Pike, who's just disappeared. Pike is off up the road already, and you can see it in the fact it doesn't look like a huge gap, but it's almost a second as it stands. Well, as they make the way out of turn number 5, we ride on board here with the Quantum Racing team driver from QRT, and as they make the way out of turn number 6 and onwards towards 7, you can see how Hedwig trying to line up the run out of 7 and get that run down this back straight. Now he's in the tow. He will very gradually creep close initially, and when he gets in about 2/10, that's where you'll suddenly see this wall of slipstream just kick in, and he'll charge on through. But he's inching very gradually at this point. Indeed, it's like he's not getting closer, but I can assure you he is little by little, and now he's really in that zone. And Leighton Austin puts the car in the middle of the road. He's going to make Hedwig go around the outside into turn number 8, but he's going to oblige as they roll the way on through. And as they do, no change right now, but of course as they make the way on the exit curve, could we see a dive to the inside? No, Leighton Austin covers it off very early there, not using the line he'd ideally like to use, which is a wide outside entry. He has to cover it off, but as they roll the way through turn number 9 up into 10, Hedwig continuing to literally dice, and he looked for the potential cutback there, but tapped the rear quarter panel on the right hand side of Leighton Austin's car. Hedwig going for the right idea, but just executed it a little bit poorly that time around. But you can imagine there, with everything on the line, mistakes will happen. And as they make their way into turn number 12, Renandito continues to watch on. But as they head on through at this point, we do look from them back to our race leader of Hubert Szymanski here, the Salt Racing Community driver, 12.5 seconds clear of Harry Phillips in P2, and there's not much happening in that top 5 as it currently stands. Well, I say that, it is the case that Menno van der Molen in P5 right now, having to battle for that P5 position. And the thing is, it couldn't be worse. It's battling with your own teammate, and Tim Troquet behind him as you see them both making the way through turn number 8. They're not too far ahead of P7 driver Kieran Sharp here, and Sharp will be coming back with a vengeance. He knows he's got unfinished business with the DC Sim Racing drivers after what happened at turn 10 much earlier on in the race. And as they make the way up into turn number 10 right now, indeed Liam Page the same, albeit Page has dropped down to P10 already. I think Kieran Sharp at this point will be looking to go on the offensive as they roll their way towards the end of this lap. But the Sim Racing Collective driver has delivered a brilliant race so far. Even if he finishes P7, nothing can be taken away from him. A brilliant qualifying lap to put him on that second row. Robbed at the start, of course, a bit of a poor start, find himself on the outside into turn 1, and he has shown dogged resistance all the way through. But it is the case, of course, as dogged and determined, Tim Troquet and also Menno van der Molen, and whoever finishes in that P5 position right now, it has to be said, they have worked themselves very hard for it as they make the way around onto what is for them their 40th lap of the circuit under race conditions. But as they do, we look from them to P13 here in the form of what is Wojciech Newberg and the Czech driver chasing after P12 driver Tom Davidson, and Davidson has closed up to the back of Josh Millington here with only 13 minutes left on the clock. and Millington running outside that top 10 in P11. Arguably, you would call him the best of the rest because he's not in that top 10. It is the case that he makes his way into turn number 1 under pressure here from Davidson. And these two, of course, no strangers to racing one another. They've been in a bit of a rivalry all this race, and earlier in the season we've seen them come together and enjoy the race between them. It is the case that Millington at this point holding on for the time being as they head through the right into left to turns 3, 4 and then 5, the final right-hander in this little sequence. But as they come through that right-hander, Millington looking quite compact right now in terms of his driving style, looking confident in the car. Meanwhile, Davidson really trying to find a way to get into the head. Oh, goodness me, I was going to say, well, that doesn't look about right. No, that was a little bit of latency there, thank goodness. We didn't want Millington to suddenly go straight on out of turn number 6. That would have been a disaster for him and for everybody, so we don't want to see that. But now Tom Davidson definitely trying to get into the hunt, into the slipstream as they make the way down this back straight. We're right on board here with Tom Davidson as he gets closer and closer now into ideal tow zone. He peels out to the inside here, and you can see how he's gradually creeping ahead. And as they make the way into turn number 8, it is the case that Tom Davidson goes up the inside for P11, but will Millington now come back at him into 9? No, Davidson covers him off, outbrakes his rival as well, underbraking into turn 9. Tom Davidson gains another place, but the thing for him is now, if he wants to take that P10, it is a 21-second gap to a struggling Liam Page. And Liam Page, of course, on tyres that have already seen almost 80 minutes of driving. It's the case that Liam Page is a couple of seconds off the pace on average compared to his peers, but by no means is he going overly slow right now. And well, Davidson will not have the time unless he starts to take at least 4 seconds a lap out of Page. He will not have the time to go on the offensive come the finish unless Page makes a major error. But then again, I don't think Liam Page can be counted on to make an error given the error-free race he has driven already. And indeed, SOP Motorsport have practiced that strategy of not changing tyres. There's no doubt about that. But meanwhile, as we look here from our battle for P11 to our battle for P5, it is the case that Miller van der Molen has dropped Troket. In fact, he's opened up that gap to 1.2 seconds here. So I think this battle has calmed down for the brief moment. Have we got any other battles towards the front that could open up in the closing stages? Well, our race leader, Szymanski, at the moment has a 13-second gap over Harry Phillips, and that gap is only going one way. It's going up, it's not going down. And meanwhile, Sir Foch is matching the lap times of Harry Phillips. The gap between the two of them being at 6 seconds, but there's no real closure rate at the moment. And then Christophe Samin running in P4, much like the top 3, it is the case he's not quite able to close up, and the gap is stabilising, or if not, it's actually going slightly up and he's falling back from the top 3. So I think we have got a settled top 4, and it's the question whether it'll be Menno van der Molen or Tim Troket who completes the top 5 as they make the way on down the round. Well, as they do, we've still got racing further down the order. It's not going fully quiet here in the closing stages. We do have Randy Renandito here still battling with Icket Headwind as they both found their way past Leighton Austin for P19 and P20 respectively. And Renandito now is trying to steal that P19 of a Headwind with the limited time remaining here at Circuit Paul Ricard in, of course, Le Castellet, the Var region of France. And as they make the way up towards turn number 8, well, Renandito looking close, but not close enough here to force the issue. I think he's going to have to wait another lap, or at least another couple of corners before he tries to go for some sort of move. But as they roll the way on through turn number 8, he gets the better run here, interestingly enough, both within the limits as they head down towards 9. Headwind has to go defensive under braking there on entry into 9. Renandito, oh goodness me, you could see what Renandito was trying to do there. He was trying to get the cut back midway to the apex of turn number 9, but he just asked too much of the car, and the rear end started to come out on him. If he'd been able to keep the rear end of that car planted, there would be no reason why we wouldn't have seen him try to go to the outside into turn number 10. But Renandito definitely feeling feisty here. Meanwhile, back in P23, Chase Goodall for the RIP Racing Club, chasing after Ryan Cooper at this point for P22. And will Ryan Cooper here, a rookie in this season of the series, looking to try and hold off Chase Goodall as they make the way through turn number 12 and in towards 13. Can he find his way up past Cooper, or will the Wild Things Racing driver be able to hold off the RIP driver come the finish here? They haven't got long left. They've got practically 5 more laps to go when they go on to the next lap. And as they head across that timeline, well, you would think that Chase Goodall is looking the faster of the two. Given that last lap, he was 0.7 of a second faster. But as they make their way into one, Chase Goodall up the inside here. Cooper not able to put the defense on, but I don't think he'll be thinking about the defense. He's looking for the run back round the outside into 2. Chase Goodall out braking himself, but as they make their way down towards 3, now will Goodall go all in on the brakes? No, he backs it off. He decides to wait before going for another move. I think he's thinking now, you know what, you've got a very long straight coming, don't be silly, wait for the straight. And as they make their way through 4 and up into 5, Chase Goodall now will do everything he can in order to line up the pass as they roll the way through the right-hander. Behind them, that is your race leader who's coming up to lap them, I believe, of Hubert Szymanski. But as they make their way all the way up through turn number 7, it's now the case, can Goodall get close enough, or is he going to have to wait his turn? Well, as they head down this back straight, building up the speed little by little, he is getting closer and closer, and as they head all the way up towards the right-hander, Goodall's definitely got the pace, and you can see Cooper covering him off, forcing him to go around the outside there. I love that from Cooper, bringing the car over gently, but as they make the way over, you can see Goodall's just got so much more speed from the toe, and as they make the way through turn number 8, the floodlights are on now. Ryan Cooper will not be able to come back on here, and Chase Goodall gains P22 in the end, and I think they now have to be a bit wary of those blue flags, and Szymanski making his way on through here. Of course, he's the one who has to take the initiative of coming on through. It's not like the Formula 1 blue flags where the driver who is a lap down has to just peel out the way immediately, and Szymanski at this point doing so the safe manner, gradually coming between them. But as we look from him to what is our P13 driver here of Andrew Pike, it is the case that he is trying to keep ahead of Ike Hedwind, and Hedwind has had a bit of a poor last lap, but he is closing gradually. And further back, you can see Ian Hall here under pressure from Renandito for P19, as Renandito all over the back of him as they roll their way out of turns 1 and 2 and onwards towards 3 as they head down towards the next braking zone here. Ian Hall, he's putting a brilliant effort, but keep in mind as well, Ian Hall did not change tyres in the pit stop. He only put fuel in the car, and that is why his pace now is really started to hit a cliff compared to the likes of Renandito, who took the fresh tyres, and therefore they can keep on going. That last lap, to give you an idea, Ian Hall was 3 seconds slower than the driver behind him, and right now I think all he can do is throw the defense up and see if the defense is enough. But on this back straight, well, we've seen it time and time again, this straight just offers so much speed when you are within half a second of the driver in front of you, and when you get to within 2 tenths, you just gain this huge overspeed. And as they make their way down towards turn number 8, Ian Hall decides not to defend here. I think he knows his cards are up, and he's now thinking about defending P20 from his teammate Leighton Austin. And you can see then the rear of the picture is Renandito on the inside. Hill is going to fight this round the outside here, but I think it's only going to go one way, and that is the Rapid Drivers Club driver gaining the position as Renandito closes the door on the inside, moves up to P19, and now goes chasing after Headwind towards the end of the race of P18. As they head on out the corner here, it is the case we look from them to a bit further down the field, and in particular to Jeff Trujillo here, the American driver running in P30, and it is the case chasing after what is Drew Matthews, but Matthews is 15.5 seconds up the road, and he's got his teammate Indris behind him in P31. Half fast game, to be fair. Whether they're having a good day or not, they stay in it to the very end, and that's what it's all about. They're having fun out there, they're enjoying the racing, and also bringing it home in true sportsmanship fashion. And right now the 242 driver continuing to charge on, but we look from him to Sir Fosh here in P13, I was going to say in P3. It is the case chasing after Harry Phillips, but the gap between himself and Phillips is only increasing little by little. In fact, the gap now up to 7.5 seconds, but by comparison, and here's where the interesting part is coming in, Christoph Samin, P4, 2 seconds off of Sir Fosh as they head towards the very end of this race. Now, is it the case that Samin has found a little bit more pace in the car? Has Fosh just found the pace? It started to fall away. Well, as they come across the timeline, Samin Fosh a 55.3, Samin a 55.2. I think it's the case that Fosh is just balancing that gap to Samin here, and then as they roll their way into the next lap, they've only got 3 more laps to go, including the one they've gone on to. Can Samin potentially get himself onto that podium for the first time in the series? our cards would say, I think he's got to find a bit more time. But then again, he's shown a lot of pace over the first half of the season, and this second half of the season, he is showing no signs of slowing down today. And in fact, it does look as though Walsh showing a bit of a difficult time here, find his way past the reeling cross as they make the way through turns 5 and 6. And I think he'll now have to find that pass on the back straight here. But how much time has it cost him? It's definitely cost him a bit of time, because you can see how that gap has actually crept down. And as they make the way down this back straight, now Walsh will be able to find his way on past. As they head up towards turn number 8 in that toe, of course, the gap has come down by a further 10th, but he will gain here in that toe. And in fact, it looks like Walsh just has not got the speed to come on through until the very end of the run here. And Cresswell had to be aware of the fact he's got Walsh on his inside now. But this is very telling, of course, with the amount of potential downforce that's being run on the 888 car as they make the way through the right-hander. You can see in that toe, he's gained 3 tenths over Samin. And now, with only 2 laps coming to the end of this one, I think Walsh will be safe unless he makes an uncharacteristic error rolling his way up through the long right-hander at turn number 9. But as he comes up towards turn number 10, we do look from him to what is one of his fellow drivers in the team, and that is Igor Hedwin, who is now trying to go on the hunt for P17 at the close here at Paul Ricard. And well, he's going after Andrew Pike, and you can see the Sim Racing Collective driver just in front of him as they make their way down towards what is turn number 3. Will it be the case that Hedwin is able to gain one more place come the finish, or is this as far as he goes as they roll the way through the right-hander at turn number 5? My gut feeling says he'll take a shot at this, as we see Andrew Pike. Then we in fact ride on board here with Andrew Pike as he makes his way through turn number 7, and you can see Hedwin there just a bit far back, half a second back, as they head onto this straight and gradually starting to gain. But again, it's a long way down the straight, and indeed from that far back, he's not going to pick up too much of a toe. It's in the very late stages, if he gets close enough, that's when we'll see the toe suddenly spring to life as they make the way all the way up towards turn number 8. But as they do here, Andrew Pike definitely feeling safe this time around. No need to leave, just simply bringing the car to his racing line into turn number 8. In fact, struggling a little bit there for entry speed into turn number 8. And you can see how much Hedwin has closed up here as they make the way under braking into turn number 9. I think Pike at this point may just be feeling as though the car's not quite with him in terms of the speed he can carry through that high-speed apex at turn 8 anymore. And you can see how Hedwin here looking for the cut back into turn number 10, trying to set it up. But in the end, Andrew Pike knows it's coming. He covers it off here as they make the way through 11 and up into 12. But definitely starting to build up a challenge here is Hedwin right at the end of this race. He tries to look around the outside to inside here through 12 and 13. There's no way he's going to do it from that far back, but he's starting to think, where's the grip? Where can I get all around him? Where can I annoy him? And that's exactly what you've got to do right now in these late stages where tightness kicks in. You start to feel the legs going. You have to put that pressure on the driver in front of you to make that error and open the door up for you to have that opportunity right at the close. But speaking of the close, here is your race leader, Hubert Szymanski, who goes on to what is the 47th and final lap at Paul Ricard in round number 4 of this series. And I see briefly there coming into the pits, that's Callum Conde heading to the pits from P32. Perhaps there's a bit of an underfueling in the car, which would be a shame for him today. We have had 3 retirements in this race, in fact 4 retirements. As we case, we've still got 35 cars out on circuit here, and as things come to a close, it's Szymanski who's on his final lap and looking to bring home the win. But as he heads on through, he doesn't need to do anything special now. We look to P5 and Menno van der Molen at this point, ahead of his teammate Tim Troquet. It is the case, I think these two have settled their order as they head onto the final lap. And I can't imagine they'll be battling to the end. Kieran Sharp in P7 has not been able to close up, and in fact he is falling back gradually to Jonathan Reed, which is a bit of a surprise. But right now he's got enough space between himself and Reed to feel comfortable, I think, come the finish. But most of our battles have now calmed down. We've got Mark Bunyan here who's trying to put the pressure on Alex Nunes for P15 right at the end here, as these guys are heading on to their final lap shortly. They're currently on their penultimate lap, but as they roll their way on through, the SOP Motorsport driver here, 9, he wants that P15, but he's got Nunes to pass, and Nunes is not going to give that up without a major fight as they make the way on through turn number 11 and head up towards turn number 12. And really these two have enjoyed great racing here today, and Nunes has had to fight to be in that P15 position, but then again he loves a good scrap, as we see Bunyan looking very close to the apex at turn number 13. And as they make the way out the corner here, it is the case Nunes being caught a little bit shy there, and again back on the throttle. I think Bunyan's going to have to run into turn number 1 as they make the way on through, where it is the case they'll head on into turn number 1 and Bunyan's up the inside. But meanwhile, as we look from them, we look to our race leader for as he clears the final corner. It will be a new winner today, and it is Hubert Szymanski from Poland, representing the Salt Racing community, who takes the checker flag, your winner after 90 minutes of Paul Ricard. And then it will be Harry Phillips, who comes out the final corner, P2 in the end for a Wild Things race in the Britain. A solid drive from him, wasn't able to take the fight to Szymanski, and in traditional form, it will be P3 in the end. Samuel Fosh, who comes to line, hold off Christoph Salmon to the finish here in P3 for Salt Racing community. Christoph Salmon P4, just missing out on that podium, and then it will be Menno van der Molen who completes the top 5. That top 5 position of P5 being fought over so hotly throughout the race, but it is his come the checker flag. We're not sure if it's going to be his, depends on the stewarding outcomes afterwards, but still Tim Troquet P6, Kieran Sharp in P7, and then we have Jonathan Reed who comes across the line in P8 ahead of Matt Camelio in P9. A brilliant drive there from Camelio on his debut, and then Liam Page in the end soldiered on to complete the top 10 after not taking a tyre change. He's made it work to finish inside the top 10. SOP Motorsport gambling on their strategy and making it work. It will then be Tom Davidson who comes on home at P11, the best of the rest outside the top 10, and as he makes his way across that timeline, it will then be what is Josh Millington P12, then Wojciech Neuwirth in P13, a great drive from him from starting P19 on the grid. Yannick Kurtz P14 as he makes his way through the final corners, and as he comes through that very right-hander, it'll be the case he'll be thinking about what could have been if it were not for a drive-through today. He lost out massively for a penalty, and he was definitely on course for a top 10 finish, but still one to learn from. It'll then be Mark Bunyan who comes home P15 ahead of Alex Nunes P16, and he made that pass into turn 1 that we briefly saw. Ege Hedwin complete P17, followed by Andrew Pike in P18, you see them there, and then it will be Retnandito P19, followed by Ian Hall and his teammate here at Leighton Austin as they literally come across the line side by side together. My goodness, great photo opportunity for Quantum Racing team, but congratulations to all of our drivers, and a special congratulations to our race winner Hubert Szymanski, taking that win in the end in deserved form. And we will be very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, hearing from our top 3 finishers of Szymanski, Phillips and Fosh. We'll be back in about 5 minutes for those post-race interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them, because what a race it's been today at Circuit Paul Ricard. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're due to kick off our post-race interviews, and I'm joined by our top three finishers in the interview room. And we start off, of course, with none other than our race winner, Hubert Szymanski. Hubert, a brilliant drive from start to finish from yourself, and, well, absolutely flawless in the end. You just seemed untouchable out there. Just describe how it feels to add your name to our race winners of this season.
Teammate who actually prepared this setup a long time ago for a different series as well, Teemu Karpin, and he isn't here today. He's bloody quick as well, but he still managed to carry the team today with the setup that he did. So yeah, big shout out to him.
Oh, indeed. Well, it's all a team effort at the end of the day, it has to be said. And the team effort has been something which we've heard about time and time again from your colleagues at Salt Racing Community in the previous rounds. But focusing a little bit on yourself, just for the purposes of this race, obviously qualifying very close between yourself and also your teammates. But it was a top three lockout for the three of you, yourself, Iket Headwind, and also Sir Fosh. It was a brilliant qualifying session.
Yeah, actually, luckily the track became optimum quickly, so it was easy to get in the rhythm. Also, I had like no issues with any traffic on the track, pretty clear. Yeah, and previous practice also helped to manage the sun that was pretty blinding in the first sector. So it's definitely just some of the practice paying off in the actual quali.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of practice, of course, we had heard previously that the team haven't necessarily had the time to practice for the early rounds in the season, such as Donington Park, but the practice going into today and going into the race, of course, we saw you start on pole and lead the drivers down into turn one. But you absolutely flew away, whereas there's battling all behind you. Was that always the plan, just running to the distance as soon as we saw the green flag?
No, I was actually really worried about battling with my teammates because, you don't want to sabotage each other, getting into too spicy fights or anything. And, my two teammates actually did collide in T1. And yeah, that just created the gap just enough to get Harry out of the slipstream, which was, again, another worry out of the way. Because if he did manage to stay within it, I think it would be very close and very tough having him on my tail. But yeah, with this, I was just able to focus on my tire wear and focus on my consistency. And that just really allowed me to keep up the pace for the entire stint. And that was the key today, to just constantly, throughout the whole stint, build small and small and small gaps on top of each other.
Well, indeed, it definitely showed they're building those gaps through and through. And in terms of your strategy, it looked like quite a comfortable strategy out there, pitting about the midway of the race. Was that always the goal in terms of splitting the race into two equal halves?
Yeah, it was basically pitting when the fuel ran out, splitting in the middle, because Paul Ricard is pretty tough on the tires as well, especially the front left in the last sector is working hard. So really no point extending the first stint. And just split it in the middle seems the best strat.
Oh, indeed. And it worked out all the way to the end. The lap times just kept coming on in, left, right and centre. You never put a foot wrong over the course of the distance. And coming around the final corner, of course, to take that checker flag, what was the feeling going through your mind when you'd secured the win?
I was pretty happy. I mean, I have some experience on this track also in endurance racing. So I think I also managed to not get any warnings. I had like second warning late on in the race, and as you saw probably as well, there were a couple DTs for track limits in this race. So I'm just really happy with this experience paying off, and yeah, also keeping cool, keeping concentrated for 90 minutes in this extreme heat that we have in Europe now. Yeah, happy overall.
Oh, indeed, I must admit, it is a little bit hot in this commentary box right now, and I can appreciate that heat in continental Europe. But, of course, coming from yourself to the team effort, with yourself and Sir Fosh both on the podium today, picking up huge points. Didn't quite work out for your teammate of Iket Headwind, but he still managed to recover to P17. It must be a good feeling that you guys are right at the top of the championship, major points still coming on in, and whilst Karpinen couldn't be here on circuit today, he was able to contribute with an absolutely stellar setup.
Exactly, and this was a kind of a redemption race for me because I did race in Kyalami, it was the first round of the series, and I gotta stop and go 30 in that race, so I lost some points there, so I am also really happy to redeem myself today.
Well, it's been a day of redemption, and as we look ahead to Autumn Park in 2 weeks' time, how are you feeling for the series' return to the United Kingdom?
Well, I don't know the squad for the next race, but I personally like Alton. It's hard to overtake, but it's a track with a great flow. I like Alton personally, even if it's a bit tough with GT3s to race there. It's still really enjoy to, let's say, lap and race and drive there. It's really engaging, maybe unlike Paul Ricard today.
The loathing for Paul Ricard continues. Well, Hubert,
Yeah.
just before we do let you go, whilst you are live on air, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to on the broadcast?
Oof, just the Salt community, really. It's a fun community, and it's also amazing that we are pretty much casual players, but we just motivate each other. We spend so much time on this game together that we can, be up the pace with these aliens and esports teams in this series as well.
Oh, well, that's absolutely brilliant to hear. I do love the sounds of the community spirit within the salt racing community. But with that, Hubert, once again, thank you for joining us in the interview room and congratulations on your deserved race win today at Paul Ricard.
Thank you so much.
So coming then from our race winner to our second place finisher from World Things Racing, Harry Phillips in the number 26 car. Harry, it looks as though you gave it everything out there. A start of a race where you decided to try and part the seas of salt, and in the end, P2 was where you finished. A good race in all, given the fact you were targeting the top 5 at the start of the race?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it at the very least. So you could tell that my pace wasn't quite there compared to Hubert, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the P2. A bit of an incident at the start of the race between myself and Fosh. I gave him a bit of a bonk. Don't know if that's penalty worthy yet, but we'll see. I mean, I'm happy where we are now, even if I get demoted to a P3 later, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm just really exhausted. I've been driving for about 4 hours straight now, nearly. Because I've had to start. I started doing ADAC this afternoon. Had to do a double stint and then onto this straight away. It was exhausting.
Indeed, you definitely sound as though you're exhausted. And I hope there's a nice ice cold beer or alternative beverage lined up for you when you do
Yes.
wrap up this evening. But just with regards to qualifying in particular, we saw, of course, much like Hubert was saying about the conditions, the circuit came up quite quickly to optimum, and it meant there was a lot of push out there with regards to the car and the circuit. Do you feel as though qualifying was the best you could have achieved? Because it seemed as though everybody was really putting in blistering lap times.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I found was that I kept getting track and lap invalidations before I'd even started the lap. So if you come out the last corner a little bit too quick, even if you don't go off track, if you take a little bit of a wide line to get a good exit, the game just invalidates you for the next lap. So I actually couldn't get a lap in. I think the only lap I managed to get was my first or second flyer, and then for the rest of the qualifying session, I couldn't get a single lap in, unfortunately. I think I did show a little bit of pace in the race because I got a 54.2, which I think is actually quicker than my quality time. I can't remember.
Indeed, the pace was there, and over the course of the race, we did see that continue to come on. And just coming onto the race in particular, that race start, what was the goal at the start, given the salt racing community had locked out the front row plus P3, and Kieran Sharp found himself on that second row in front of you? Was it to try and creep in amongst them all right at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I had flashbacks to Suzuka last year, where the Salt community drivers did a little bit of a team on driver on driver incident and took each other out. So I was kind of hoping for something like that to happen, and then maybe do some Moses work to drive between them. And it kind of happened again. I managed to slip in the inside, and then get a decent exit through turn 2 at the exit of that chicane. Yeah, and then I managed to get up to P2, and that was that really.
Oh, indeed, and from that point onwards, running a very solid race, but having to continually push all the way through. Did you stick to the strategy you aimed for at the start, or did you have to change the strategy?
I did have to change it a little bit because I had to pit a little bit earlier than I would have liked. I think I pitted at the same time as Fush and Hubert, but I was hoping to go long, but I didn't put enough fuel in. I don't know what was going on. I think obviously I didn't have much time to test, so I massively underestimated the fuel load needed to actually get about 10 minutes extra. I mean, it wouldn't have worked anyway because the tire degradation was really bad in my first stint.
Well, still, the strategy that you did deploy led to you finishing in P2 in the end. And whilst it hasn't been a circuit you've enjoyed today, we of course return to the United Kingdom in 2 weeks' time for Alton Park, a more likeable circuit.
Yeah, by far. I was saying earlier that I think this track, I'd be very happy if I never had to drive it again. But Alton Park, yeah, absolutely love it. It's such a good track. It's very difficult to race around. I think, as Hubert mentioned, it's difficult to overtake, but it's really, really fun. I mean, I've never driven the BMW there, but so it might be a different story if I don't like the car combo. But yeah, absolutely looking forward to it.
Well, we'll have to look forward to seeing you out there in 2 weeks' time, taking to the Alton Park circuit. But just before we do let you go, is anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Yep, I'll shout out my team owner, Denise Pope. She's been doing an absolutely stellar job in the background, managing everything for Wild Things Racing, keeping everyone, organized, making sure we got the drivers for this event and also for all the pro events we're doing at the same time as well. Don't envy the task of managing a whole bunch of us, but yep, she's been doing a really good job.
Oh, I'm sure Denise will appreciate that. But with that, Harry, what I'll say is go get some rest. You've definitely earned it. And congratulations on that second place today. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul.
So coming from our second place finisher then to our third place finisher and making a bit of a regularity of this. Safosh, another third place. You're becoming synonymous with that position. Is that where you expected to finish today? Or is there a bit more on the cards, do you feel?
I don't even know what I was expecting, really. I came here with my usual amount of practice, so I did my installation laps really in the qualifying, because in the free practice I was a second off pace, so I was learning on the go, as they say. So I wasn't really expecting much. A bit unlucky on turn one, a bit unfortunate, but I think P3 is okay considering how the race started.
Oh, indeed. And just talking about those installation laps and the pace coming on, we saw your opening qualifying laps were about 1.5 seconds off of the provisional pole lap. And then just suddenly, it's almost as if it clicked and you're right up there in P2, about, I think it was 200ths off a provisional pole. Was it the case that it just clicked out then? You felt as though I found the grip, I found where the car lies? Or was it sort of, you're still learning and it just feels as though the pace keeps on coming?
I mean, the BMW is a weird car. Anyone who's driven it kind of knows that it's like absolutely front limited, and the more you send it, the more you can get out of it. But it's obviously on the expensive tires. So driving this car in the race is mostly about just managing tires and how hard you actually yeet. Let's use the word yeet into the corners, because that is like what kills the tires. And the more you do it, the worse it gets at the end. But in qualifying, I half drifted half of those last sector corners, and I actually had the pole. I encountered traffic and lost 2/10 in coming out of the last corner. So I did actually have the pace for the pole by just absolutely sending it. This car, it feels like there's unlimited grip as long as you get the front end to point where it needs to be pointing. So it was kind of a culture shock for someone who usually drives the Ferrari to drive this in quali. So I just pushed it more than you really should, but it somehow worked. But a bit unlucky with the traffic on the last corner in quali.
Oh, indeed. And we did catch a little bit of where you got caught up in that traffic, which was unfortunate, but still a good qualifying position all the same. And then coming to the start of the race, we saw, of course, yourself and your teammates locking out the top three, but then a bit of a coming together into turn one seemed to upset the balance.
Yeah, a bit unfortunate. I mean, the sun didn't help. I think I braked later than even Schubert did, but then he just went for it. But I just didn't see my teammate in the sun in the mirror. I could have maybe avoided it, and even after that, we could have done a much better job of just boxing Harry in and not giving that position up, and then he could get unfortunately spun coming onto the straight. So that wasn't the best start for us, but is what it is, as they say.
Oh, indeed it is. And you still got your head down and charged on all the same in that P3 position. And we saw throughout the race, it looked like quite a straightforward race. Did you stick to the strategy you had planned? Because we saw the top three, yourself included, all coming at the same time.
Yeah, this track's really brutal on tires. And I think in this car in particular as well, you don't want to be running any kind of alternatives. You're just going to lose a lot of time on those bad tires. Either if you run the first stint long or second stint long, the difference is massive in this car. So splitting it down the middle seemed like the most reasonable thing here, especially when weather wasn't really a thing to consider.
Well, indeed, we had very pleasant weather all the way through, so no risk of rain or anything along those lines. But just towards the end of the race, we saw that Christoph Samin, the DC Sim Racing International driver, closed up rather rapidly on the last couple of laps. Was there a bit of a worry that they could have the pace on you, or was it the case that you were managing it to the end?
I mean, it got a bit spooky in the last corner, but from the turn one and the second boop, I had like 4 seconds of damage. I'm not gonna sit here and say that's why my pace wasn't there really, but it probably didn't help. But it got closer than I wanted to at the end. But you know, it ended all good, so I'm happy with that.
Oh, indeed, it was a solid end to another solid day of driving from yourself. And just a comment on the team, of course, your team, the reigning champions, and now that we're 4 rounds in, looking very strong in that title defence. Of course, yourself and Hubert on the podium today, and Ickett Headwind having to make a recovery to P17. And I do believe it was the case that we did see your other colleague who took to the field finishing in P13. It's looking up.
Yeah, it's looking good for us. So we have really quite a lot of really strong drivers. So I'm really happy with that. There's always someone who is willing to race, and today we field our team in literally at the end of practice session. But we got it done, and once again happy with the result. And Schubert did absolutely brilliant job. What 15-second lead or something like that? Maybe not 15, but 10. Really good.
Oh, indeed. A solid job by the team all around. And looking ahead to Alton Park in 2 weeks' time, how are you feeling for the circuit?
Well, it's probably going to be a bit more tricky than this because here mistakes, especially in this car, don't really mean much. Worst thing that can really happen here is a warning, which I also did collect 3 of those like 40 minutes before then. But yeah, Alton's going to be much more tricky, harder to race on, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I like the track. Never driven a BMW there, but I've never driven it anywhere, so that's nothing new, really.
Oh, indeed, learning as you go. But just before we do let you go, Sir Fosh, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to live on the broadcast this evening?
No, of course, the whole community. It's just awesome to be a part of it, and there's so many cool people. The community is growing so quickly. It's really awesome to see. So yeah, the whole Salt family, let's say.
Oh, indeed. Well, that's absolutely brilliant to hear. But with that, Sir Fosh, congratulations once again on 3rd place today, and thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thank you.
So here and there from our podium finishers, which were Hubert Szymanski, who took the win, Harry Phillips in 2nd place, and Samuel Fosh in 3rd place. It is the case that we do see a number of regulars on this podium, but at the same time as well, brilliant racing between the trio, and we'll have to wait and see if we see another new winner come our next round. But with that, that's our post-round interviews complete, and now it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. And if you do want to know more about the Rapid Drivers Club community in terms of the series we run, what we stand for, and everything else in between, then why not check us out at our official Twitter. That is twitter.com/Rapid Drivers Club. Alternatively, you can go to our link tree, which is linktr.ee/Rapid Drivers Club. For all of our different links, our social media, our website, and everything in between there. But now, speaking of in between, and it is the case, there are another 2 weeks in between this round and round number 5. Our drivers will be packing up their bags, the teams will be packing up the garages, and slowly making their way over to the United Kingdom before we return on Saturday, the 3rd of September 2022, for the penultimate round at Alton Park, a circuit which is typified for being very narrow. Track position is vital, particularly in these wide GT3 cars. The wide BMW M4 is definitely going to make it difficult for overtaking, and it's all about do or dare into each and every corner. You can imagine there could be a few upsets, and much like we heard from our podium finishers, this is going to be a track that is going to be very difficult for overtaking and in general up the ante as the season heads closer and closer towards its close. Who will come out on top? Will the Salt Racing community be able to extend their lead even further before the season finale? We'll find out all that and more in 2 weeks' time. But until then, thank you very much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. We have been the Rapid Drivers Club. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit in a Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.